Yes, okay. And you can hear me?
Yeah, and so the volume might be a little bit. Your mic just.
Okay, I just wanted to check because I'm not always the loudest person. Okay, I am going to call our South Burlington School Board special meeting to order on Monday, July 22nd, 2024 at 9:07 a.m. Are there any comments from the public? I don't see anyone in the room. We have one attendee. Hi, Elizabeth. I recently attended a school board meeting from my hometown, and it's a very small rural place. And they asked me if I wanted to make a comment because they're not used to having attendees. And I was just listening to see how the funding formula was going. And so now I kind of want to ask Elizabeth if she has a comment, but I'm sure if you do, you'll raise your hand. Okay. I am not seeing any comments from the public. Any amendments to the agenda this morning?
Nothing on my end.
No. Okay, then we're going to move into our discussion items. I would really like for this retreat to feel like a conversation for all of the board members. So it's the formality of the chair like leading the discussion. I'd like to kind of let that fall away for today. This is our opportunity to get on the same page as a team, to talk about how we're going to work together, not necessarily the work that we plan to do in the next year, like specifically, but like, let's get on the same page as a team. Violet and I had the opportunity to meet with Chris 2 weeks ago now. I really wish he could be here. He had some great points, but I'm going to try to remember the really important pieces that he wanted included in the discussion today. So with that said, I'd love to start with our self-assessment survey, which can be found on page 123 of our VSBA Essential School Board Workbook. I'm curious. So one thing is I noticed that perhaps people were having trouble completing it because you just have this paper copy, and how do you get this paper copy to me? So I uploaded this entire survey into Google Forms like verbatim, and I shared it with you, but you may not have, I shared it, I think, last week. But I'd like to take some time this morning for any board members who haven't had a chance or weren't sure how to access it to give you some time to complete it. I would like to discuss as a group how effective we think this tool is and if this is something we'd like to do every year or if we'd like to modify this in any way. I think it's a great jumping off point. What do you guys think?
So I did complete it last night.
Yes.
You got mine. I completed it before I left.
I think that
Did I not do the right one?
I think you might have found like a vision page.
Okay,
So I'm gonna send I'm gonna
Okay.
send the group the email that I sent. I know everybody's been doing summer things. Should we do like an icebreaker before we jump into discussion or no?
I think we're good.
Okay. So I'll just share this link and please let me know if you're having trouble accessing it. Let me just find it. I don't think it'll take a super long time to complete. And I do think it's
wrong one.
worth, yeah, it's okay.
All right. That would explain why I couldn't answer a lot of those questions, Chelsea.
Okay. Elaine, did you get an email from me with the,
I did, but my emails disappeared and that one disappeared
okay,
along with some others.
okay, so I'm gonna forward this to you. So it's at the top of your inbox. And then if you need help accessing just let me know if you have any trouble accessing the survey. Because I know we haven't used Google Forms before, and so I just want to make sure that you feel comfortable.
Sometimes Google Forms behaves.
Oddly, yes.
Oh, I need permission.
Okay.
We use them all the time.
I'm a big fan of
You
Google
know, sometimes
Forms.
like it says I have an email here. Oh, here it is. Okay.
Let me know if I can
Got
pop over. Helpful. And then a lot of times revert to a personal Gmail account. So that's the other trick,
Yeah,
of course, is
check.
making sure you're logged in as
It
your,
doesn't, it says the right account, it just
gotcha.
doesn't open it. I have no idea why. Like I couldn't, it's your bus driver thing.
Okay. Laura, I'm not seeing a permission request from you. Are you able to access?
It just says learn more.
Now it says wrong password, but
Yeah,
it has.
so
email
it just says you
address.
need permission contact, so
That's so weird.
yeah,
Are
yeah.
you logged into your school board?
No, I opened like 1,200 forms. Yeah, I am. Let's see.
All right.
All right,
I
now
don't
let
know
me just
what
what
to
I
do
can
with
do
this one
here.
because it says my school, but
Password once again. See if it works out.
No, I really don't want to spend all my time doing this. Can you put it up on the screen? Can we look at it?
now it
Because
seems to be working.
There you
And
go.
say, okay.
I don't think it'll
Alright,
take
you're
a
good to
super
go.
long time
Okay,
it's not a really long, I expect like maybe 15 minutes. Is that okay?
no problem.
no, 100%. Okay, I just didn't want to waste your time by
No,
doing this.
we have plenty of time. And I think it'll be a really good place for us to, like, if we can look at the results of the survey as a group, it'll help us to know what is important in the year to come, what we'd
Got
like to improve upon. It's going to be interesting to see, like, who uses which answer, you know what I mean? Like, are you always a strongly agree person? Are you always an agree person? You know, like that kind of thing.
.com or .net? I don't know.
Net.
So you have my results, right?
I do,
So we're
yes.
good.
Yep.
Okay.
And actually, this would be a good time. Hey, Nick, question for you. Once everyone's completed this, Google Forms allows me to share the response, like, why don't I show you? I'm gonna turn my camera off so I don't give people not turbulence.
Like
Yeah.
seasickness?
Seasickness, that's it. Once everyone has responded, I can. it, like, puts all the responses like this.
Okay.
I'd love to share this on that, but I don't. Do I request sharing?
Still need permission. So
Um,
we can't put it up there. It's not gonna let me.
I've shared it to anybody within our organization. So I'm wondering if you're logging in on your.
No, I'm not. I'm logged in. Okay, here it is. No, Chelsea, I think I'm. God, it's so-
Okay, so you want me set already as like a full service. I didn't even try, it just was,
Yeah, you should. So you might.
it looks like it would work.
I think so, yeah.
Why don't I just try?
Yeah. So far, so good. Okay.
And then I can just do like. Awesome. Stop it. Okay, thank you.
I think Elaine did.
Hmm?
Is your work back there for Scotty?
Contusi. Yeah,
Oh, is that what that is? Okay.
It's a, no need to dump. It's true. They're just done.
How is work going along?
Well, we released the product finally, like this week, nobody's ready. It's a mess. Everybody's freaking out, but that's been that way for like the last 2 months, so. We've been on for GE Healthcare. I work in IT and or a lot of the departmental software stuff. And we've been on, thank you, quality hold for like, I don't know, a year, just crossing Ts and dotting Is, and now they're finally releasing. So it's been a scramble for like 2 months now.
Okay, yeah, I moved that on purpose. I don't want to be hurt. Okay, I know, but I don't want to move right now. That's why I moved it. I was trying to talk to Elaine. and I didn't want to.
Okay, well, we're live.
I know, but I just didn't. Okay.
So
I,
curtail your conversations as you please.
They're good. One of them was sick for a while. It's just, I mean, you've had young kids. I keep catching myself thinking like, okay, we've got the sleep thing down. We've got it. And then something happens and it takes like a month to get back on a regular schedule. And, yeah, so they're good. They're healthy. We were stacking firewood yesterday and we have a weed in our garden called American pokeweed. And I only know that because Opal had one of the berries in her hand and it was not clear to me if she had put one in her mouth. And so of course I like download a plant identification app on my phone. I identify the plant and it says like the worst, like I click like toxicity to understand. I've never read something more alarming. It was like causes cancer, is extremely fatal. Like, and I have a microbiology degree. I know that there's like very few things in this world that would just cause cancer immediately with like first exposure. But mom brain doesn't listen to logical, rational brain. So I had my first opportunity to call poison control, which is an incredible service. I spoke to a pharmacist and he had like a whole database and assured me that, you know, it usually is kids who eat this and in 60% of cases, completely asymptomatic, not a problem, and told me what to do. So they're good. They're testing my stress threshold every single day, but they're good. Yeah. I guess you probably have different stresses with your age group.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, there are. They're not necessarily mine, but you know, there are stresses.
Yeah,
Some of these I don't know because I haven't been on the board long enough. So
yeah, that's fine. Chris let me know that anything he was unsure about, he clicked disagree because he was unsure. So if
that's fine.
you're comfortable, you can do that if you'd like. Whatever feels right to you.
Yeah, because there are a bunch of things that I just.
Yeah. Oh, this is kind of funny. So Lily says data, like she knows how to say data, and I'm pretty sure she knows who data is. And so I said to Opal the other morning, I was like, Opal, can you teach Lily to say mama? And she looks at Lily and she goes, Lily, yeah, which is what she calls my mom. And then she looked at me like she did it on purpose. She was like, I'm gonna teach Lily to say anything but mama. I was like, where is this like sarcasm coming? You're not even 3. Like
It's terrible when they develop minds of their own.
oh, it's really, really cool. I also just feel like her language keeps, it just like, she just wakes up and has 10% more vocabulary. You know, it doesn't feel like it's a gradual thing. You go from like, Mama, milk, please, to Mama, where's my milk cup? Could I have more milk, please? And I'm like,
And they start using it against you.
yeah. Yeah. She has been doing this thing lately where I'm learning how to, I mean, they're little, and so Opal will try to take something from Lily and I'll say, it's not your turn, you can't just snatch things away from your sister. And she started doing this new thing where if she feels like I'm going to hold the boundary and make her give the toy back, she'll tell me she's scared. I think because one time she really was scared and I, held her and comforted her, and I think she thinks, oh, if I say I'm scared, then I can shut this down. And I'm like, so what are you scared of? I'm scared, Mama, I'm scared. Yeah, it's a fun time for sure.
We used to keep on the refrigerator calendar. And at the end of the month, I always, and for a lot of years, I took a picture of the calendar because Laura would write like funny things they said or something like on a certain day and everything. And so every once in a while, it'll pop up on my like photos review of like, here's
Yeah.
2011. I'm like, oh my God.
That's so
That's really
nice.
great.
Isn't it? It's wild how those like little things, like Opal's not even 3, and I've had friends remind me of stories that I told them of Opal where I'm like, I already forgot about that.
Oh, yeah.
Like, thank you
It's
for
like
telling
gone.
me that. Like,
Mhm.
yeah. When Opal was like, the one I'm thinking of, when Opal was like almost a year probably, she was kind of like playing peekaboo with my comforter, like in my bed. And all of a sudden she found the tag on the blanket and she just kind of looked at it and she like whispered to herself. And I just thought it was the silliest thing because she couldn't talk and she couldn't read, but she was like holding this little tag and going like, and I was just, you're like telling the
I
secrets of
just
laundry.
did that, but know that some of my districts are just.
Yeah, that's great.
a clue.
Okay,
Great.
awesome. Thank you guys for doing that. I appreciate it. All right, so now I'm going to share my screen so we can look at these results together. And I should probably refresh this to make sure. Okay, are we all set? Are you ready? Feeling good?
Mhm.
Okay. So the first question, we seek community input in a variety of settings and contexts to ensure participation that is representative of the community as a whole. It looks like we 60% agree and 40% disagree. What do we think is the most time effective way of moving through these questions, taking notes for possible discussion? I don't think we should have robust discussion about every question because we'll never get through the whole thing. What feels best to the group?
Why don't we just review them and then just walk back through them really quickly for comments?
Okay,
So we
is
can
it helpful for me to kind of narrate the responses or do you guys just want to read it yourself?
Just look.
Okay. Just let me know if I'm going too fast or if you want me to slow down. I feel like now that we've reached one like this, it's very clear to me, like, okay, this would be one that we need to pull out for discussion, right?
Would it be okay if we reviewed that first category before, this is
Sure.
our second
Yeah,
category,
yep.
right? Policy parameters.
Yeah, so you're saying review the vision for education in the community
Yeah,
section
if
first?
That may be appropriate
Yeah.
because otherwise I'll lose track of.
That makes
my-
really
my
good
brain
sense.
can only hold so much.
Yeah. Okay, so the aim of this section is to understand how the board feels about our own community engagement in terms of representing the community as a whole, open communication at board meetings and throughout the district, community engagement supported with resources. Have we established a vision and clearly communicated that vision to our community? Do we use the vision to guide our decision making? And do we use data and evidence to see how we're doing against our own vision? And do we refine the policy when necessary? So I would love to start with the question that has the strongest disagree first for discussion, if that's okay.
Sure.
Because most of these, it looks like 60% agree, 60% agree, 80% agree, 80% agree, 80% agree, 80% agree, and then this one is a big difference between the rest, which is 60% disagree, and even the 40% agree, there's no strongly agree.
Let's just reminder, we're using the disagree category as an I don't know also,
Yeah.
so.
Right, 'cause there's no neutral
Yeah.
responses.
Which actually, just as a question, I tried to keep this tool verbatim I didn't want to change it. But in the future, would a neutral or unsure answer be effective?
Yes.
So that might be something I would add next year when we do this.
I think the board has come such a long way with community engagement. I mean, Laura and Elaine have brought back the donuts and discussions, which is awesome. You know, later on the agenda, our next agenda item is the finance committee, and I feel really proud of those initiatives and appreciate that those are really launching. And just as we reflect on the last 2 years, that seems really great to have those formalized structures in place. And I think in a year from now, when we review this, we're going to be like, oh, wow, we've had really effective mechanisms for communication via these, venues for the last year. So it's a little bit of looking ahead in there as well.
My responses generally reflect that we haven't put some things in place yet, and I really feel like, judging from the feedback I get as a human being,
Yeah.
that we need to be better about communicating. So that's just general feedback that I get from the constituents.
That's helpful. Okay, so for this question specifically, the board has reviewed and, if appropriate, refined the vision in accordance with policy. I do feel like this question, when I think about this question, I think about it as a great question for somebody like the VSBA to put towards boards across the state. I'd like to first ask, what do board members think our vision is? Because I think I have a very clear idea of what our vision is, but I would like to know if you feel like you know what our vision is. Because if not, that's data that I need to know.
I actually have gotten this question from a constituent, and I know what our ends policy is.
Yep.
But I don't know if that's the same as vision or not. So I sort
Yeah.
of direct people to the ends policy
Yeah.
on the website, but I feel like I may need to know more and constituents may need to know more.
Yeah. Laura, do you have,
I have the same question. I mean, there's the mission policy. So, yeah, and I, see, I've just assumed it was the ends.
Yeah.
Policy.
and,
But I don't know if I'm probably correct.
no, I don't think you are.
Like,
Yeah.
it's, to me, it's the ends policy. That's our mission. It's very clear. It's very concise. And I think, I speaking personally, when we have issues and discussions, that's the one statement that always seeps back into my brain as we're talking is how does this compare to the ends policy, right?
I think though that maybe people outside of here know that ends policy and vision are the same thing because a lot of people don't think in terms of ends policy. They
Yeah.
think in terms of vision
Right.
and mission.
So maybe,
student and policy distribution. I mean, if you're not in doing this kind of work, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I
Most people haven't-
recall first starting to sit here and hearing the word ends and having no idea
Right,
what was being discussed and what does that mean? So there, yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Education.
Opportunity for clarity. We could make that part of the education. And that could also be a topic at the donuts and discussions of, hey, we want to talk to you about our ends policy. What does that mean? And then, for your work as board members, that the monitoring is the way you evaluate if the ends are being accomplished, and that evidence provided is what you look at
I
for
think
that
it's
proof.
translation, though. I think it's people really understanding what all of those monitoring things are for.
Yeah.
And what the policies are for.
I think also we were all present for the policy governance training that I did in our first meeting following town meeting day. Which unfortunately Chris wasn't here for, but I did get the chance to review that with him 2 weeks ago. Maybe being more clear instead of just saying like, this is our 1.0 global ends policy, because that was a policy training, saying this is our vision and having that as an opportunity to unite the board in understanding right following election day, this is our vision as a district. So do we think that that would help? So with this, the board has reviewed and if appropriate, refined the vision in accordance with policy. What's funny to me about this question is like, the policy is our vision, so they automatically have to be like in accordance.
accordance.
Yeah. So do we think?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's splitting hairs. So the
Yeah.
vision to me is the ends policy and is the end statement. And we have any number of policies that we continually realign with that. So.
I think it's important to remember that community members don't speak education needs at all.
Yeah.
And they don't understand it and know it, and they shouldn't. So we need to meet people where they are.
I think that point is so well taken, Elaine, that it's like, we are representatives of our community, and if we can't communicate back to them what it is we're doing here, then it's not pointless, but it's,
I don't want people to feel like the board is like some special cabal.
yeah.
I want people to feel like it's your board.
I think unpacking the ends in a donuts and discussion and adult learning series would be great to just take the jargon out and to say, here's how we're trying to support our students and our staff,
Totally.
period.
I think there has to be acknowledgement, though, that any meetings that we have are not going to be attended by tons of people.
Yeah.
And so we need to somehow communicate to all the people who vote
Yeah.
that this is what we believe.
Do you think this would be a good topic for another paper article? Like, what is the district's vision? And then citing the ends, like
I
policy,
think
but
it needs to somehow be communicated
more,
in a broader way.
yeah, okay.
so, because there's like an end, vision, and then mission, so there is a lot of,
Yeah,
so,
I mean, maybe then the question is, should our ends policy be where this mission statement is?
that's kind of what, that has always mystified
Yeah.
me. Tanya.
Or is this supposed to be?
That's the mission of the district, not the board,
Yeah, not the
right?
board, so
But it's-
that's.
It's
right.
unclear.
So it's mission of the South Burlington School District, so, I mean, so whose mission are we talking about? Is it the board or the district? I thought they were.
And I
the same.
think.
I think they
exactly
should be
that.
one and the
I mean,
same.
if they're different, then we have a big problem.
Yeah.
Having
One and the
something,
same, yeah.
something listed here different than the vision in our ends policies creates confusion. So I think you bring up an excellent point that like we could modify our agenda to be more clear.
Yeah,
Yeah, so maybe instead of having this mission written here, we could put our ends policy statement here, like the 1.0 global statement, which reads, should I read it for us? Students successfully complete their education from the South Burlington School District ready for their next step. They will show cultural and academic competence appropriate to grade and developmental capacity. All graduates will be prepared for college, career, or individually determined next steps. The ends will be met at a cost the community will support. So if that's the vision of what we're trying to monitor with our policy and make sure our policy is doing, maybe that's what should be on our
I
agenda.
actually even had a constituent say after reading that, oh, this is the mission. Great.
yeah, I think that, yeah.
Okay, so I'll make a note of that as something to. Is that something we would have to take formal action on? Not
No.
to change the agendas?
No.
Yeah, okay. Okay, any other pieces that we would like to bring up for discussion? Does this feel too stilted? I'm trying to make sure everybody feels comfortable.
It's a board meeting, Chelsea.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So this was the one question in this section that had a strong disagree. The rest is like general agreement, but there is still some disagree present in a lot of these questions. Is there another, or is there another statement that we would like to talk about in this section?
I'd like to just provide some general feedback. I think, knowing that we're using disagree as an I don't know, and that
Yeah.
2 people of the 5 people on the board have said that they don't have an understanding there. So I think from my perspective as ongoing education, that there are, several board members who need kind of the understanding on what our vision is, so the
Yep.
ends policy, and how monitoring drives that. So I think for me, from an education lens, I'm seeing an opportunity to really clarify that with the board in our ongoing work together.
And I also think, from my perspective, a lot of this, I know has to do with vision, but also has to do with the communication.
Yeah.
And I really feel like that's where I sort of don't know what's going to happen in the coming year, because I think there are things in place for the coming year. But up to now, I feel like communication has been a lacking point.
So it would be helpful to clarify our communication plan as a board and how we engage with the community. I just want to make sure I'm hearing like, this is the opportunity to structure
Yep.
what we work on.
And I think it goes beyond just writing other paper articles.
Yeah.
Because not everyone reads the other paper, and I don't think the other paper should be the only mouthpiece for the board. I think there should be engagement, and I think the conversations that we have and donuts and discussion at the library are not donuts, but just discussion.
Yeah.
No donuts and
Yes, so
discussion.
no false advertising on my.
Right. I think that would go.
Just
a way on
discussions,
that.
yeah.
And individual conversations we might have as constituents. Please look at this, please, anything that we do one-on-one, just direct people is important. But I think as a body, we need to be sure that we're doing all we can to communicate effectively to members of the community, especially as we enter into another budget season and as we have really a very primary education things ahead of us.
Yeah.
I think it's super
gonna be
important.
huge.
Yeah.
to those lines.
So I think the mechanisms in place are board meetings, and, they're all recorded as well. The other paper articles, the discussion, community discussions, the adult learning series, it'll be the finance committee. In the past, Front Porch Forum, in the past, there was a board Facebook page. I've gotten a lot of feedback that social media is something from a school district side that folks want to use more. I'm just bringing that up as something, for discussion.
I do agree that is really important. Just given the level of, and I'm not saying that people will come to our meetings, but there's always people out there who are making comments just to make them. I know that's a tricky one, because I don't think it should be a place where people can just go vomit their angst about, whatever. I'm not so sure I can really deal with that. I think it would be good. If we could just keep a pure professional and people, I guess people are gonna make comments. I just don't think it should be a place where we're then going to engage. It's just purely, here's information, and then maybe contact us privately if you have questions. I just don't want to get into like a back and forth. It just
An open
seems to
meeting
have
law
gotten just
violation.
really.
Yep.
Yeah,
I don't find Facebook to be professional, like
yeah, that's
as
what
a,
I'm saying. Yeah.
as a small business owner, I utilize social media as marketing and advertising.
Yeah,
But I think social media is where people have every right to go and say whatever it is they'd like to say. And I just don't, this is just my personal opinion. If the board would like to look at having a Facebook page to share information, if it would be a great way to access more community members, then I'm all ears. I just think we would need to be really diligent about our professional behavior, how we
Yes.
use that page. I don't want it to become, I don't want it to become an open meeting law violation. I don't want it to,
that's what I'm afraid of right there. What
um,
about Front Porch Forum?
yeah,
So,
so,
you know, like just like a monthly, like a quick paragraph of Front Porch Forum. It's like all of our representatives do and our senators.
I
And
think even more people, I know I find legislative updates there a lot. And I
yeah,
know a lot of people use that even more than the other paper. I think a lot of people turn to Front Porch Forum for information, not just about lost cats, but you know, actual information. Like, what do I do about flood relief? What do I do about legislatively knowing where things stand and is there a meeting coming up? What do I do about this? What do I do about that? That is very, I think it's a resource that a lot of people turn to. I know. Who's it like?
oh my gosh.
I know that,
Oh, gosh.
we are a social media free household. We don't have Facebook. We don't have any social media. And my inclination as a human being is to not have that be a news source and not feed into that as a news source. Because I don't think it's a reliable news source. And I think that if people heard it on Facebook or saw it on Facebook, I think the reputation is that it might not be fully vetted and accurate. And so we have to contend with the reputation of Facebook as well as the reality.
it's also a privately owned company, and so we could build a whole following on Facebook and it could just disappear at any time. So unlike Front Porch Forum or the other paper where those aren't, they're not just gonna disappear, you know what I mean?
I like the idea of having the monthly, so there's 2 Front Porch Forum posts a month that the board can do with your account. And I like the idea of that being more formalized and having
Yeah.
maybe somebody in charge of that communication, whatever that is. And it could be as simple as quick updates or where to find information
Yeah.
or invitations to meetings. Hey, we have a discussion coming up. It's at the library at X time. Or, hey, there's going, check out our new adult learning series.
Exactly.
And just use it
Wondering about
for-
the vision?
Yeah.
Go here.
Well, I think it's actually, we have 2 postings per month and we also have 2 calendar postings per month, right?
Oh, awesome.
So I think that we could post about things like that, but it also kind of melds nicely with the fact that we usually have 2 board meetings per month.
Mhm.
And so we could talk about either having a Front Porch Forum post a week in advance of our meeting where we want to highlight for the community what we're going to be discussing and what sort of information that they could find. Or it could be the kind of thing where we share a posting following a meeting to inform the community about what was decided. I'm not sure what would be the most effective, but we do have 2 postings a month. We typically have 2 meetings per month, so we could use that as a more formalized approach to communicate with the.
Now, could we do, who is in charge of the?
I have the login.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So we get, it sounds like we have 4. No,
Well, I
2.
think 2 calendar, so like we can add to Front Porch Forum's community calendar twice a month for
So we
free.
could put like finance committee and discussion, you want to call it community discussion,
Community
just to make
discussion
it
with
with the board,
this, yeah,
with Laura and Elaine.
Laura and Elaine.
And then there's 2 like, for example, I've used it in the past to alert the community about the Safe Routes to School Task Force resolution at City Council, or I used it to put out a statement on behalf of the board. So that's it. There's like 2 postings per month that can be lots of text for whatever we want to tell, and you can post links in there too. So if we wanted to link to our agenda page where folks can find our agenda and the monitoring report that we're gonna be reviewing or something like that.
So it sounds like we could do like so Elaine and I, it's gonna be once a month, so that would, so, so the calendar meetings, what we're doing, and then finance committee. When,
Yeah, or-
when that happens, and then maybe. I don't know, that's tricky, right? Is it updates, what we talked about? I mean, I often like, oh, wow, I really want to go, oh, that's happened. So but that's on me, I mean, that. So, yeah, what we're going to be talking about, and then, I guess you could say what we're talking about. And then after the next meeting, we review this, and next meeting, we're doing this.
We could do, you know how I do a weekly board updates email?
Yeah.
Where I kind of highlight, I try to foreshadow, like, this is what we're gonna be discussing at the meeting either this week or next week. Here's the relevant data, here's some background information. I could kind of make a version of that for the community that I put out twice a month, where it's an update about, here comes the meeting, that like, this is when the meeting is, here's where it is, how you can find it. Here's the information and the conversation topics we'll be discussing. So it could be like a community board update that I provide bi-weekly. And if you guys want to help me write it, that's fine. But if it's more just informational and not, to me, information doesn't take very long to make. So that would be fine. I would be happy to do that on behalf of the board. It's just, here's the information. I don't have,
Right.
versus like a conversation topic where I have to try to understand the full board's opinion and then write about that opinion. That would take me quite a bit longer. And I don't think I could commit to doing that twice a month with all my other
Right.
responsibilities.
Yeah.
We could, I don't mean to add to your plate, Tim, as clerk, but, there are things like if, the board could make the decision to, divvy up communication. So maybe some of that would be on the clerk of, hey, the clerk is going to post the calendar invites and work with the board to get what those are, or be in charge of the post or something, just to, divide up the workload, as an option, if you all wanted to explore that.
Maybe what we do is we decide for a certain amount of time, like let's say 3 months or 4 months, we're going to utilize Front Porch Forum, our 2 free postings, to do community board updates 1 week in advance of a meeting, reminding the community when the meeting is, where they can find the information and what we're going to be discussing. And then we'll add to an agenda in 4 months to review that community outreach and see what we think, how it's going, if we want to make changes. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay.
And connecting it back to the VSBA survey, I would say one of the first posts could be, wonder what our mission is?
Yeah.
Check out our ends, let's unpack the ends, which is what we're trying to achieve.
Any other, this has been great discussion already. Anything else for this section that anyone feels strongly about?
Could we, so to that end, I mean, once we get Tim's educational series video on our, the board's mission, on the ends, we could put that up on Front Porch Forum too.
Yeah. My only comment on the communication, I have 2 comments, or 3 actually, now that my brain is engaged. First, I am not a fan of trying to have us communicate via something like Facebook or whatnot, anything where there's a discussion board where it can be anonymous and people are just like slamming on you.
Yes.
And this is an area where I think we struggled with the budget discussion this past year. We provided a lot of information out. There was a tremendous amount of communication. What I don't think we as a board did very well was monitor the social media that was out there. I think there was a lot of misinformation going around. There was a swell of emotion. And that was hard to be. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is I would rather us monitor or try to understand what the community is feeling through social media, but that's not our primary way to communicate with them. I think we have very appropriate methods of communication right now, and it's very open, it's very clear, the rules are very clear. Anything else kind of sends us down a slippery slope, right? But I do feel that going into this next season, monitoring what the community is saying is really critical. And I think there was a lot out there. There was a lot going on, and how we tackle that is going to be important as well.
I think this is gonna come up in our finance committee discussion.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you're talking about the South Burlington community page? Like where,
Okay,
that's where I was checking. I didn't participate in the discussion. I just wanted to know what.
yeah, and I'm not I will confess, I am not anti-social media, but I don't follow it at all, and that may be to my detriment to understand how the community is
no, I don't
feeling.
think
Some
so.
good points. There was quite a bit of
But-
misinformation and disinformation on there, and it wasn't really conducive to a thoughtful conversation. So I never responded.
I mean, some of it, we can't fault people. I don't think all
No.
of it was malicious. I mean, things were changing in the legislature literally by the
Absolutely.
week, which was changing our facts and figures. I mean, it was,
Which is
it was
why
a tough time to be like, I think it would have been great if we had a mechanism in place to be like, this is where you get the most accurate and up-to-date information. And that's like a board meeting.
Our website, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah, but it's not practiced yet in our community. Like people do still seek out Facebook and things like that. So I do think the finance committee will address some of that you're talking about.
Yeah, and my other comment is I think we need to be better at tailoring the message to the audience. I think we provided a tremendous amount of data, a lot of like blah, 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 and that's what the community was hearing, right? So it's one thing to provide stats and this is this and this is that. It's another thing for us to be able to understand, you know, the emotional aspect of that and what should the message be, right? In accordance with what we're trying to achieve. So again, I feel that from a communication perspective, if you'd asked me 3 or 4 years ago as a community member, I'd say I have no idea what the board is doing or what they do. And part of that is on me as a community member to make that effort. We know that 70% of our community probably won't because just who we are as a people. But again, I think we have very good avenues at this point. We just need to tighten them up and we need to be very good about working them. So
It's just like, I just think about how I run my classroom and yeah, there's all kinds of information, but there has to be a one-stop shopping. This is the most accurate, I have something that comes out, it's scheduled to come out every day. And that is the most up-to-date information. I just don't expect students to like search around, even though they could. But
Where do I go for the
where
word?
do I go? You just go here.
Yep.
This is it.
I think
This is
it's
what we do.
gotta be the website.
Yeah, and so it's, go to the website, email one of us, we'll tell you to go to the website, but I think if we're all clear, like, just go to the website and you'll find the most accurate, up-to-date information. I think that should be.
But
clear.
that said, I want it to be really easy to find at the website, like
Say that.
front and center, because
Yeah.
people don't want to search.
Yeah.
Well, and if you talk about something as emotional as the budget, if it seems like it's difficult on the website to access the information you're looking for, that's not helping anything. So, and to that end, Tim, do we know, would your adult learning series videos live on our website, like on our board page?
they would actually live probably in YouTube and they would be accessible. We could post links to them any place, right?
Yeah,
So
okay.
you could link out to them.
Okay,
I mean, sure.
that's more nitty gritty. We don't need to, I do want to, I would like it if this doesn't take up our whole retreat, just be an important part of it. Is there any more in this creative vision for education in the community that anyone has more to say on before we move on to the next section?
Last comment is, I've said before, I watched a lot of the previous boards and their meetings, and this is not a new issue.
Yeah,
This is something that every board has struggled with, and if you watch the meetings,
Helpful
this is a
perspective.
challenge, right? So we are not,
Thank you.
we are not breaking new ground here.
I almost said that earlier in the conversation. So this is my 4th year at South Burlington and this is something I've always heard. And when I came here myself, experienced of the process of familiarizing myself with the ends and understanding what it actually means and where it fits. So not new.
Okay, so I'm going to move us on to established policy parameters. This section is intended for us to, well, let's just read the individuals and then we'll come back. So school district, board's vision, 80%. Wow, look at this, you guys. Our policies clearly describe the board's intent and leave implementation details to the superintendent.
Oh, yeah,
Across the
sorry.
board, we seem to be in agreement about that, so that's great.
To me, that says we're understanding, monitoring.
This one, I would say, if you did not click strongly agree, if you clicked agree, it's probably because you're not sure what the federal and state requirements are, but you feel from monitoring reports that it's clear we're. So maybe what I see from this, even though it's like 100% agreement, is how do board members check our state and federal requirements? So let me just make a note of that.
I think a lot of it has been VSBA stuff, and Laura, I've appreciated you bringing back VSBA updates, and I think having that as a standing agenda item is really
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah.
Because they also cover budget updates, right? So Tim and I
Right.
can talk about those, but from a board member's perspective, I
Right.
think it's,
Because they're on the
they
house
try to
floor
make it
every day.
accessible.
Yeah, yeah, they're right in there with the federal and state policy.
Mhm.
It's great to see. A meaningful role in the policy development process. Get that, Violet. This one is interesting to me. Okay, I know the questions I'd like to discuss, but I'd like to open it up to the group first. Where would you like to focus our energy?
I just have one general comment as I answer the questions here. I probably put in, one or two strongly agrees and mostly agrees. I think the issue we face as community members is that education policy is extremely complex. Law is extremely complex. Even understanding our own local policies is complex. I mean, there are any number of them. And if you were to ask me what is policy H2 and this and that, I would struggle. So, I kind of rely on, hey, this is the calendar, this is the policy we're looking at that point in time. I engage with it and try to understand it as best I can in prep. But again, this is, I from an overall process perspective, I'm very comfortable with how we handle it. It's just there are so many policies, and Violet, I'm not sure how you handle it all, but
It's a big part of my work
it is.
I take, policy is something that in my role, I have to ensure compliance, right? And it's I spend a lot of time reading, and it's funny that you say that. I had the same reflection. I had a meeting with State Senator Ram Hinsdale last week, and she said, wow, you really are up on the policy. And I said, we've really had to be this past year in a way like unlike any other year with the budget pieces in particular, and even tracking committees. So I think the board has had a lot of growth in the past year on the policies, and certainly the legislative updates have been ramped up in VSBA,
Yeah.
Vermont Superintendents Association. We've all been really paying more attention to those. I would call that one of the biggest operational changes in the last, part of this is like reflection work. So for me, I think that's been an area of growth for all of us. And I think we'll continue to need to follow policy closely from a state level.
Do you want me to just focus where we discuss, and then if I don't cover what you'd like to talk about, speak up? Does that work?
Tim, did you have more to say?
No.
Okay.
No, I struggle with it. It is not my daily work, and so when the meeting rolls around, I am poring over the words and such. So this was an interesting set of questions to answer.
I would imagine in this first one, the disagree comes from being unsure what the board's vision is based on our previous conversation, but that's probably, okay.
We've got an action step from that is communicate with the board and the community in layman terms,
What our vision
what
is.
the vision is.
Any of them that have like strong agreement, we're just gonna move on. I think we're good here.
We'd celebrate the successes too.
Yes. Okay, so our policies identify measurable outcomes or objectives where appropriate, and I think where appropriate here is pretty key language in this question. But we see 40% disagreement, which we know we're also using as like an unsure. Is this something we'd like to discuss now, or?
So again, I will comment on this. I think I probably answered this as an agree and not a strongly agree, only because of my lack of, when we get into things like reviewing the curriculum standards or progress of students and stuff, I'm not a statistician. So I believe there are definitely measurable outcomes, but I'm not comfortable enough to look at them and say, yeah, that's spot on, right? So as a community member, it gets exposed to it a lot. Just the first time I see the agenda, I believe that it's there. It's a matter of, do I want to spend 8 hours trying to dig into the stats and all of that? So yeah, we definitely have measurable outcomes. I'm not expert enough to say every time if we're right on board, but I appreciate all the guidance and having everybody come up and explain it. And that's very, very helpful. So
I read this as the board needing information that, we really need to drive things into our work calendar and look at, ask ourselves the question, where does this fit in monitoring? And I think that confusion can sometimes be widened when we're having one-offs and when we're not saying, yep, this is in this monitoring report, and being really clear that those are how we are measuring outcomes. Because there is alignment between the monitoring reports and the policies. And so I think that's the biggest opportunity for continued understanding here.
I think also the question is like, are we talking about our policy governance policies, or are we talking about district policies? Like, I don't think the question necessarily is very clear either. And I think it's, in some ways, it's both, but does anyone else want to comment on this before we move on?
In general, about whether we're talking policies or monitoring reports, I know that there is a technical data component. I know that I have to know, but there's also, I want also okay, water it down and cut the chase component. So there's in the weeds component, which is important. And there's also like the overarching, this is what this is about, and this is what this shows, so that it's, so I'm just thinking about expanding the board and everyone sort of understanding that these are details and they're important, but this is the overarching thing as well, so that I don't have to ferret that out from the details.
Yeah. Okay. This one, I'm glad to see this. Stakeholder representatives, school board, senior leadership, district staff, school staff, employee organizations, parents, community advocates, and students play a meaningful role in the policy development process. Would we like to discuss this, or?
I feel like a lot of people feel like policies are done to them. A lot of students feel like policies are done to them. That's just what the policy is, but don't feel like they're a part of the policy. I don't know. I know not everybody can be, it's not kumbaya. I understand that. But at the same time, I want them to feel like this is their school. This is their school district, and we are here for them.
Yeah.
I think about our, one of the equity policies, I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but students and Mr. Osher's, and I think a staff member from the high school as well, came and presented this policy to the school board, and we're the ones who adopted it and reviewed it, but it was created by students, staff, parents, community members. So I see that as a meaningful role in the policy development process. And then I think there are policies where if it's like state or federal requirement, there's not opportunity for feedback because it's
Wiggle room.
right.
Right.
So that's sort of my feeling on this question, but does anyone else?
I think, we've done a lot of discussion. We've had a lot of discussion about policies being last reviewed more than a decade ago.
Yeah.
And this year, with the policies that I've brought to the board, 3 of them have been regarding school safety as required by Act 29, right? So in compliance there. And those, we used, so that the VSBA prepares a model policy for a lot of the required statements. And they do a nice job of attending to the legal requirements. So that is a piece here, which is pretty finite and it's not negotiable. But what we did with those and with the trans and non-binary policy is, well, I'll speak to the safety ones. We worked with our district crisis team, which has about 25 people on it. And we went through multiple rounds of revisions, basing it on the model policies. We also looked at other districts' policies. And so that felt like a really comprehensive process that had significant engagement. And then we, of course, read it 3 times in the meetings. With the transgender and non-binary policy, the VSBA didn't have a policy on hand. And part of that is that, same with the electronic communications policy, it's ever changing so quickly that those are going to be policies the board needs to update more often. And yet they're important to have in place because it's protecting our students and staff. So adding those in, I think, we saw incredible engagement with the trans and non-binary policy, multiple rounds of feedback and modifications, and then, finally it going to legal. And what does legal do? They have to strike some of the pieces that, stakeholders felt were important. And I think, for me, it's clarity on understanding that there are legal components to these. We want feedback, and if it can't be integrated, it's because of, typically the reason it can't be integrated or included is because of laws. And so that's Elaine, you've done a lot of talking about today that it's sort of a pull, right? I mean, the board has to have detailed information to really ensure that monitoring is happening appropriately. And, how do we convey that to the community in a different way? And I see the balance here too of attending to law and getting input. So as we continue to monitor policies and anything that I bring forward to you, it's going to be heavy on the engagement and attending to the law.
What's confusing to me though is the wording of the question, because I think the understanding of policy beyond this table and us is different than there's policy and there's policy. You know what I mean? Like, I'm glad I met with Kathy DiNatale to talk about tracking, because after the discussion, I was like, I don't really understand this. And there was a really enlightening discussion, but I feel like not everybody can go over coffee and talk with Kathy for 2 hours. And 2 people, that's policy, but it's not like we have to meet this policy legally, and we have to, subscribe to this policy, and it has to be such that, so I don't really understand like what policy means in the question.
Yeah, I think it's also worth remembering that this is made by the VSBA, so it's not with South Burlington District in mind. It's meant to be a tool for all districts to use.
All of whom don't use policy governance as a model.
It's a wild world out there.
So
I totally understand like the monitoring policies, and I think we're totally okay with that.
Sure.
But I also think there's other policy that people understand as policy, which is more specific to South Burlington.
Do you think you're talking about like operational policy, which is not really it's not the board's.
All I know is the tracking thing we all talked about here, and Ron and Gracie had input on that, so I just needed to understand it, but I think that's also what community people need to understand too, like that really affects their kids and what happens in our school buildings. And I don't know if it's operational or not, but I feel like we need to understand what the policy, even though it's not the policy, capital P, it's the South Burlington policy
Okay.
and how it affects people.
Internal processes, yep, and frameworks, how the policy is operationalized.
And I know that we can't always make those decisions, but I feel like we need to understand so we can communicate to students and parents what those lowercase policies are.
I think what I hear you saying is, as a school board member, you are in part responsible for policies that greatly have impact on operations. And you'd like to have a broader understanding of how the policies that you help either monitor, uphold, or write
Totally.
impact operations.
I don't want to say like, oh, that's operations, this is policy, and never between me, because there is this weird gray area.
Well, I think part of it is like how it impacts operations is up to our superintendent and district staff to like implement the policies.
But I want to understand.
We want to have the understanding. I think there's room and.
Yeah, I think when we do monitoring, if ever a board member wants to know more, I will always, as I did in this case, make the opportunity for that to happen. And I think when it comes to community members, it isn't the board's onus to be the expert, but to direct them to.
Exactly.
So, you know what, reach out to your child's principal, reach out to, you know,
Exactly, but I
the
want
math
people to know that
coordinator.
we At least have a handle on it and
Absolutely.
are aware of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's
That's what
important.
the listening sessions will be. We're just mostly listening and directing people
Exactly.
to the right person.
Connecting them
to
for
ask.
resources.
I mean, I
Yeah.
think I certainly,
We can't speak to everything.
no, it's impossible.
Well,
I mean, that's one of the reasons we have VSBA members is because they're on the floor and then they're asking us, do you want us to support like any kind of policy?
Right, I don't
That's-
know, but I trust the people who know.
I would also caution against giving the appearance of the community that you have like the power to direct some of this because we.
Right, no,
We
yeah,
don't.
yeah, we don't. And I think that's another thing we could dispel, that this,
Mhm.
we, you know.
Totally.
Okay, it is 10:13, so let's try to move through, like maybe with some of this, let's figure out what the discussion topic needs to be and then make a plan to discuss it. Does that sound good? Okay, I just want to make one quick note here is that I'm not aware of a policy review protocol that we have in place. I'm aware of a monitoring report, like we monitor the data of our policies, but the fact that we have policies that are 10 years old and haven't been reviewed, I think is, we
I
don't,
view it as the policies reviewed when we do the monitoring report.
That's what
And
we
if
felt.
there's updating that needs to happen, that's the time. So we're looking at policy and we're saying up, you know, which we review annually and then they're updated. The other piece is a lot of this falls on me, right? Like when Tim Jarvis and I introduced updates to financial policies to align with AOE updates, right? So a lot of the pieces that if they're legal requirements, that is on me to bring forward to the board. And we get those updates through, you know, the AOE and our professional organizations. But I very much see when you all are monitoring the policies annually, that there are updates, you know, that can be discussed at that time.
I don't know if I think that's the best time for us because, let me explain. We have a monitoring report that needs to be reviewed and approved, to move, like, I mean, I think the audit is actually a pretty simple one because that one's in really good shape, but as an example, I don't know if when we're reviewing the data, that's the best time to say like, maybe we should change this policy because I don't love the idea that policy can be changed based on data that we do or don't like. Does that make sense? Like,
Oh, yes, sorry. I meant it as you review the policy and you might say, data aside, like, we need to update X or Y or Z. And it's not a formal process, as you've said, but it is linked, I think.
yeah, I just wonder if it would be a good idea to have some separate review process that relates to policy outside of monitoring so that it's a more unbiased look at the policy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, my recommendation would be to, first of all, develop a little bit more comprehensive bird's eye view of the policies, because you can go to the website and you can see, and make sure we're distinguishing between policy and procedure, right? You know, there's policy D1, D2, D3. What would be nice on the website potentially is to have a column that says last reviewed and approved,
Yeah.
and then a brief summary of what this policy covers. So even for the community, that may be very helpful. So you can and then, you know, as a matter of an agenda, once every, am I turned off or something? Am I just not speaking loudly enough? Typically, I speak very loudly.
I'm just gonna do this.
Okay, yeah, sure. I'd sing, but then everybody would tune out. And perhaps on a quarterly basis and an agenda item, we take a look at that overview, that bird's eye view, and decide if there are particular policies outside of what we do from a monitoring perspective we want to take a look at and address.
Is that something you want, is that something that the board wants to develop, or is that something that you'd like me to?
I'd be happy to take a stab at just
Okay.
looking through them and coming back with some sort of spreadsheet, Google Doc at first, and then if we decide we want to post it to the website or how we want to handle that may be
Sounds good.
something to do. But that would give us then a quick cheat sheet of what these are, and help us maybe decide if we want to review some of the older ones. Because I assume that the older ones are not that critical, not that they're not critical, but you know, they don't get the oxygen in the room that a lot of the other
Yeah.
ones do. So
Yeah. Okay, anything else about this section for now? Why don't we take a 5-minute break? We'll come back and finish this and then make sure we're tracking on time.
Sure.
Does that sound good?
Thank
All
you.
right, so we'll take a 5-minute break, come back at 10:20, let's say 24, because I'm sure it's gonna be 19 soon.
Thank you.
Okay.
So we'll just cut the sound for this, folks.
Controls to protect public funds. Strong agreement. Quarterly, strong agreement. That's great. I agree with that. Seems like a pretty factual question. Anything in budget for this review that we think is important to discuss, knowing that we're going to discuss a finance committee in a little bit, which relates back to budget. I read this as the, I don't know, as new board members who like haven't gotten to the point where you're reviewing, you know, every single line and understanding what it means on like the AP orders, right? Things like that, or, you know, have significant familiarity with some of the financial reports. And I think that comes
Like
with time.
sometimes I wrote a career instead of strongly agree, it's
Yeah.
like, it's.
Don't know where to
So far, but.
yet, yeah.
Okay. All right, then I'm going to move us along to monitor progress toward the vision, assure accountability for results. Interesting that this, I feel like this could have followed the first section with vision, but okay. We have 100% agreement here. Our district has a policy review schedule in place. So again, I'm seeing we need to at least have a conversation about what our policy review schedule looks like. Strategic plan with benchmarks for progress. I'm thinking here again is board members not being familiar with this. So this is a good opportunity for us to make sure we cover this. 100% agreement. policies at each meeting of the board. I don't think we need to have discussion about this. Just let me know. I'm just gonna make decisions for us as a group,
Yeah,
and please just
no,
speak up
please.
if you want to say something. Okay, so like this one, this is our first strongly disagree. So when monitoring progress toward the vision, the board receives data from other districts that are similar to ours in order to compare progress. In general, it's not strong agreement, so I feel like this question warrants some discussion. But it also feels like a pretty easy change. It seems like the board would like to see some neighboring district data when we're reviewing our own data, perhaps.
Well, and I mean, I guess it depends upon what we're reviewing as well, if it's appropriate to look at,
Yeah.
neighboring districts and see where they're at. Just depending on the topic, so it would be interesting to see. I don't know how much it would change what we do, but again, just to try to get a comprehensive perspective of how we as a district are, marching toward our ends. I mean, if you look at other ends policies, they're very similar to ours, right? Everybody sort of has the same end. So how are we comparing? And Chittenden County is, of course, a very, populated area. And how are we doing? I mean, we are one of the bigger districts, so.
I think Laura provides a lot of this in her VSBA updates of comparative data. Remember, because it's toward the vision, not a monitoring report, which I think there's distinction in this question that's
Okay.
necessary from how I'm reading it. And I think during the budget process is where operationally we'll provide some information about other districts, but in general, that is not part of our monitoring, but I think it is work that the board does with your connections with VSBA related to the vision specifically. So, the big work, but not the policies.
Right, because there's representatives from all over the state, and they're all giving their collective info to Sue Siglowski, who is then advocating on behalf of school boards across the state. So, yeah.
I do think it would be helpful to have the vision comparison be more overt.
Okay. When monitoring progress toward the vision, the board examines district data by gender, race, and socioeconomic status to measure the success of all students. More than half agreement. Would we say that this is again, I think the word vision here is the
Yeah, that's
the hang up.
yeah.
So I know
Policy
in our monitoring reports, when it's appropriate, we do see this data broken out. Do we need to have discussion about this?
Data workbook is on the website too, so all of this information is in that, and we're gonna, one of my, moonlighting projects is to do the data report with my husband, who's faster in Excel than me, this summer, so we'll be chipping away on that. The last bit of data, the VTCAP, data, which is embargoed, will be released shortly, so. But you'll see again, it's usually about a 70-page data workbook that's produced annually, broken down by these categories. So that'll be updated. The last few years are on the website for you all to check out.
Beautiful. This, I think you're talking about the data workbook. I just made a note to make that more clear and available for board and community. So I think this would be resolved with that. Does that sound good?
Great.
Okay. Timely communications on accountability of system and progress. I see this as the monitoring reports. Do we think that the disagreement here is unclear or actual disagreement? We have 80% agree, so I think for time, we're gonna move on, but I would love following this, I would love any feedback and any continued discussion that's important to board members so that I can add it to agenda discussions as needed.
Sure.
Does that sound good? Okay, so moving on to effective and ethical operations. Agreement. I feel like the sticking point here is the policy review schedule, so not that we're not, reviewing it. So we've talked about this and we'll address that. Sound good? Code of ethics outlines expectations and commitments. Unsure. Okay, so, I'll just highlight that as something for us to.
Board policy should be shared with board
Yep.
members.
Discussed and adopted operating protocols. For us, this would be our policy under governance policies. So just making sure, I think an annual policy governance training following election day is a really important part of getting the board on the same page. And I would love to talk about, I have not read this book cover to cover, but one piece in this governance core book is the first 100 days of a new board member. And I'm like all about that. And as we're going to be having an expanded board, this is a discussion I'd love to have, making sure that we have a really, really good protocol in place for onboarding new members, getting everybody on the same page. A retreat in July, I think, is always going to be really important.
I think we should put that policy review schedule in our July retreat. I think that would be a really effective standing retreat agenda item, because we're not bogged down, if we look at the monitoring section of the board work plan, we get pretty heavy into budget quickly.
Yeah.
And I like the idea of having the time it'll take for that conversation to just annually do that in the retreat.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. Do we look at this one? Discussed and adopted operating protocols, policy under governance, 100%. Great. Love this. Strongly agree. That's great. Adheres to open meeting law and carefully follows statutory guidelines for executive session. We have strong agreement. I feel like as a board, we're always trying to follow open meeting law. In fact, having this retreat as an open meeting is an effort to do that, although I just met with a bunch of chairs from around the state on Friday, and like unanimously, they all hold their retreats not in an open meeting because they're not discussing board business. They're working on
Right,
team building
usually do
and
it Offsite,
yes, that was the other thing they
That's the
said.
other
Don't have
thing.
it because it
Yeah,
feels
that
too,
is
yeah,
offsite,
yep.
which I was surprised that we were having it on site.
I was hoping maybe at the end of today, we could talk about how to make this retreat next year better. So that might be a really good.
Just anecdotally, Greer said to me, oh, we're retreat tomorrow, where are we going?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that is the kind of the recommendation to go offsite.
Yeah. Agreement, glad to see that. Information needed to make decisions, understand. We have pretty strong agreement here, but also I think Elaine's point, understanding how the policies that we implement, advise, monitor, impact operations can be a helpful lens for how we're doing our work. Strongly disagree that board meetings are efficient and generally last no more than 2 to 3 hours. So I feel like this is a constant work in progress. I think this retreat is going to be helpful to that end of clarifying what are we doing for work, not adding too many extraneous things to board meetings. I'm grateful for this feedback, and hopefully next year it will look better.
And I think we need like call for the orders of the day needs to be a refrain, like if an agenda item is going way off,
Yeah,
we have to table it because we gotta move on because people are tuning in to certain things.
Yeah.
and Yeah,
we agree.
it's, I don't know, I guess any one of us can call for the orders of the day. Yeah,
I agree, Laura, and as the de facto agenda setter for this group, I am trying to look and pull things off that don't need to be on the agenda. One thing we pulled off was the OP articles, and I don't know if that was such a good idea because I think there's a lot of chatter in our inboxes, a lot of emails, and so when I say, hey, sign up for a month with a topic, I think it's getting kind of like drowned out with other stuff. So it might be important for like once a quarter, we set 4 articles or like the whole board, we set like who's gonna have what article. And then after we conclude that 5-month period, we have it again. So it's one agenda item and we're setting the topics. That might not work because sometimes topics come up where we're like, actually, can this be the other paper article? But this is, we can deal with this later. Grateful for this feedback. Going to continue to work on this and make it better. Board members participate in board development activities annually. So that would be like this retreat or the policy governance training.
The SBA webinars, looking at the resources.
Good agreement here. Okay. Anything on this section that anyone wants to talk about before I move us on to the next section? Or this is the end. This is the end of the whole thing. We did it. Okay. So having looked at this, if we can conclude this part of the conversation early, I think that would benefit, but I just want to kind of review what I've gotten from this. And if I'm missing anything, please let me know because I'm going to make some sort of plan based on this discussion. So we need to clarify our communication plan and our community engagement around our communication. We'd like to explore the idea of using Front Porch Forum or 2 postings per month as an update, like a community board updates, where I will post something a week in advance of our meeting, reminding community of when, where, what the documents are, what the topics we're going to discuss, and perhaps like in some part of that can be a little blurb about like, hey, are you curious what our vision is? This is what our vision is, something like that. It seems like there's some confusion for the board about how board members check state and federal requirements, which the VSBA is a big part of that, but clarifying that for the team might be helpful. And we need a bird's eye view, comprehensive look at our district policies, and should explore adding a last reviewed and approved column so that community members know when we've last reviewed or approved a policy and have some sort of little synopsis or summary of what the policy is. We want to look at having a quarterly review policy, like a quarterly review of our policies process. Some standardized way of looking at policies just standalone without any sort of extraneous chatter about why that policy is important. We want to highlight or make more available the data workbook for the board as well as the community so that people know where to seek back or seek data about our district year over year. And then making sure board members know what our code of ethics and board policies are, where to find them and how to adhere to them. That's what I've gotten from this generally. Also, I will make a note, board meetings more efficient and within 2 to 3 hours.
Excuse me.
Is there anything else from this survey that you'd like to highlight or see us work on?
Along with communication, I know this is a constant drumbeat of mine, but I really think somehow translatable so that I think that some of these suggestions like the policy just go a long way to that, but I want people to be able to say, oh, your ends policy is really your vision and your mission, that there's an understanding of the website and finding what you want really being easier for some people,
Great. I totally agree.
like front and center.
If our community doesn't understand what we're doing here, then we're not doing our job. So that's pretty important. Okay, anything else from this survey? Thank you so much for taking the time to do it. I intend to hopefully be able to look at this as a year over year comparison next year so that we can see if we're progressing. And also maybe in the future, I'd love to hear if this tool, if we feel like this tool is a good overview of what we need to be looking at as a board. I thought it was a good jumping off point, especially since I've not had a retreat the entire time I've been on the board. So this was like a good starting place. And I made the note that next year when we complete this, there will be a neutral or unsure category so that you don't have to click disagree just because you don't.
We have
know.
done retreats.
Not like this though. You know what I'm saying? Like
We did a,
they've been trainings. like facilitated trainings on a specific topic, like policy review. I feel like this retreat is the board's opportunity to look at our work plan, to assess how we're working as a team, build a plan moving forward, make sure that we're all feeling like we know what work we're doing, how we're doing it, and how we're gonna check to make sure we're doing it. So that's what I mean. You're right, like we have had,
Understood.
Yeah,
Not
no,
dry, just.
yeah.
Yep. Thanks.
Okay, anything else before we move on to a different discussion item? The next thing we have warned, and I do think it's an important thing we spend time considering, is the finance committee. I just have one question, which is, does it make more sense following the conversation we just had to look at our work plan and make sure that this looks good to us, this calendar? Before we move on to the finance committee discussion, or would we prefer to go to finance committee first? You'd rather go to the
Let's-
finance
yeah,
committee?
Let's just keep our
Okay,
current
okay.
flow.
sounds good. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Great. Okay, so do board members know what the finance committee charge is? Have I shared that with you? I can't remember if I've shared the document with you or not. Chris did have some ideas and comments that I have not had a chance to review prior to just now. But if I could just kind of introduce the idea to you. The idea is that the board stand up a finance committee whose charge will be to develop a strategy that they'll learn about the budget, and then they'll develop a strategy to share the budget details with the community, to listen to the community about the budget and report back to the board what budget feedback there is, and to advocate with the state on behalf of South Burlington about how the legislation is affecting us as a community. And Violet, jump in if you feel like I'm missing anything. So I, in partnership with Violet and Chris, have drafted a South Burlington School District Finance Committee mission and duties page to sort of clarify what this committee's charge would be, how it would be run, and what the purpose is. And so I'm seeking feedback from you, and we can talk about this. I think we should talk about this in an open meeting where Chris is involved. Chris has volunteered and expressed interest to chair this committee, and I think he would be fantastic at that. And I think in looking at this team and what we have the bandwidth for, I think that would be a great use of Chris's skills. But so I'm just gonna share this document with you all. And I apologize, it might take me a minute.
You want me to jump in while you're
Yeah,
sharing that?
that'd be great.
This is an awesome volunteer opportunity and we really want to get engagement. So engaging the community and having committee members who have all diverse perspectives, engaging with their constituents. So we're going to be accepting applications for this 7 to 9 person committee. That's a standard committee size that the city uses. We used a template similar to theirs to build our charge. So the application deadline is going to be August 6th for those who are interested in participating. And I'll just kind of read through what we're going to be sharing out. So this is something we should absolutely put out on Front Porch Forum.
Okay.
We can do that from a district level, and certainly I'd recommend the board do it. The South Burlington School District seeks dedicated volunteers for its finance committee. We value diverse viewpoints and perspectives from our communities.
I just shared this document with you all in your emails.
So the duties would include educate the community about the education funding formula, school budgets, and tax implications. Advocate for South Burlington to the legislature. Provide feedback opportunities for community members. Share information about the board-approved budget. And we are looking for residents who are able to, so this is, what are we signing up for? To attend monthly committee meetings during the school year. Participate in additional meetings and community forums. So that means, maybe asynchronously go out on their own and, engage with their own community groups. Engage in advocacy and community outreach beyond meeting times. Willingly engage in conversations about student services and priorities. desire to learn about school funding and state learning standards, commit to support the school district's mission. Interviews are going to be conducted in our open session of the August 7th school board meeting. There's a real push to get this committee propped up and developed because we need to start sharing as soon as possible about what is happening and really, the grim outlook of what we're going to have for next year, budget-wise. So, make a difference in our school community, visit our website or contact the South Burlington School District School Board for more details. So, I think we should just make sure that
Was
it
that-
says,
Is that the posting about the committee to the community? Is that what you just read?
this would be, it's kind of the commercial, if you will, it's the advertisement.
Okay, great.
For the committee. So I think the only modification there is it should just say, we need to make sure we get we'll get the information up on the website. And then, rather than saying contact the school district for more details, I think it should be, perhaps Chris Trombley. I'm certainly happy to support folks in this too. It's a little more nebulous if we say the school district.
Yeah, that's hard. So, to your points in the VSBA survey results, talking to the community, I think a part of this committee's role is that robust community engagement on behalf of the board so that we can send out like more feelers and get a consolidated advice back to the board. They would not be bound by open meeting law. And so that they would have more flexibility in how to meet, when to meet, how quickly to meet. My hope is that it would be 7 to 9 members with very diverse perspectives about the budget, so that we as a board are getting the best informed opinion. And not that the committee will be the only way that we hear about the budget clearly, but a more formalized way for the board to hear from the community about the budget. That would be one major piece. In this committee draft, I floated out the idea that this committee should be something we look to stand up every summer. So like August, we put out this ad, we build the committee, and then let them do their work. And then we dissolve it after the budget has been passed in the spring and have a review process of if the committee worked well and was what the board needed in terms of community engagement and budget information sharing and advocacy. I just think as like a newer board, I would like for us to have the opportunity to workshop how the committee works best for what our needs are as a board, and then and review it in cycles. So I think also just in terms of equity and hearing from many people, if we always have the same people on the committee every year, I think it could start to have like a I don't want it to be like a clique where it's like, oh, well, I'm a no voter for the school budget, so I can't be on that committee because it's obviously all yes. I don't want that to happen. So I think if we reassess the committee every year, that would be a good way to prevent that from happening and really keep it a clear, full perspective of our community or meant to be representative of our full community. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think this is a great idea. I was thinking about this the other day and looking at the agenda, and I have to say, going into this budget season, as Violet's already pointed out, it's going to be touch and go, right? I mean, we know where we're at from a funding perspective. I'm just going to shout out to Tim over there and all of the work he did. And I will say that I feel a lot fell to his plate because we didn't have this committee in place, and he was doing a lot of extra communication, a lot of extra work, a lot of handling of emails when he's already got enough to do. And this would be something that I think the board could take on and ensure, so we're sort of providing some interference there to make sure that the staff can do what they need to do. But we're the arbiters of communication and messaging with the community and the feedback point. So.
We did talk about having a district staff member like Tim on
Sure.
not necessarily on the committee, but being invited to the meetings to help educate the committee on the
Absolutely.
budget pieces so that they're able to go out in their whatever capacities that they develop to share budget information with the community so that they can get sort of direct, clear answers to the questions they have. Again, trying to prevent misinformation being spread due to confusion. And I mean, I think this got brought up so many times in our last budget cycle, how complex the education funding formula is. And so part of this committee would also be to try to simply explain as well as possible how the education funding formula affects South Burlington to our community members.
In some ways, I feel like it's practice for us, which is really.
Yes,
Really important,
right.
because we can't be listening to everybody.
Well, but we need to be trying to listen to
Exactly.
everybody, and it becomes complicated if more than two of us try to go out in the community and do something. And I also think to some extent, sometimes it can feel a little muddy for a community member to have a one-on-one discussion with a board member and feel like that board member is now responsible for representing that one perspective, you know? So I feel like it's a little cleaner for the board to have this committee as a mechanism to hear from constituents in a more, I'm not trying to like add steps between the communication, but make it more like, I think it would help board members feel clearer, like this is what the committee's feedback is. This is what my individual feedback with constituents is. This is what my email says. This is what public comment that is said to the board is. And I think it just gives us a little bit more, a broader view of all of the perspectives that we're trying to hear. And
The question is, do
responsive
we
to.
want to say in the application process somewhere, and I don't know if we want to say this or not, but that this isn't a one-off really, that this is like an ongoing thing, so that they don't, so that people understand that this is just, maybe because we're facing this year.
right, you're saying that this is potentially something we would like to employ every year forever into, yeah. Well, and I think that's an opportunity I think that's why it's important in the beginning of this committee for us to consider this being an annual, we charge it and we dissolve it, charge it and dissolve it, so that we have an opportunity as a board to see, is this effective? What can we learn in this year and make changes so that it's more effective in the future? What unforeseen hurdles did we face that we need to address in our next? So a little bit, I think it should be a one-off. I also think it makes the commitment a little bit easier. So you're not joining the committee for 2 or 3 budget cycles.
And I want people to know that,
Right.
that maybe I don't know if we say this or not, that their responsibility is just for this year,
Yeah.
but
But they're welcome to
looking at the
apply for future
possibilities
years if
ongoing.
they like the work and want to keep volunteering. But I also think it's important for us to, like, I even think about this as a board member. I want to continue serving because I feel like I finally got the training and the experience to be effective in this role. But I don't think I should sit at this table forever. I think there should be a period where it's time to let a new voice come and sit here. And I think this committee could be that too, where it's like, first year you're doing it, you're learning about how to do this committee work. And then the second year you apply, you are on the committee again, and you feel a little bit more like you know what you're doing. But eventually we need to make space for another voice too. Like, it shouldn't just always be the same people all the time. So does that?
and I think that would be organic
Yeah.
in the
So the
application process.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, my question is, if we are expecting people to apply by August 6th, that seems like a very narrow window to me, considering it's summertime and the news would get out relatively. So,
Yeah, I think we were thinking we could post this like ad. The school district has some like ad mechanisms. I could post it on Front Porch Forums. Hopefully folks would see about it. I hear the thought though that it's like the best visibility would be at an open board meeting. I think we were looking at, there was a timeline where there was a crunch, and I can't remember what the deadline was that was creating the crunch. It was like something about an opportunity for the community.
I mean, could we stand, I mean, I guess my question is, can we stand up the committee initially and then bring members on not all at once? I mean, do we have to have all committee members there at once? I only ask that because again, summertime, some people are not going to, they're going to be really busy and say, I can't do it. But, 2 or 3 weeks from now, when things calm down a little bit, they're like, yeah, maybe I want to,
We
right?
could switch
Number
this
6.
to discuss it August 7th and then finalize it either the second, I think it's the 21st of August or the first meeting in September.
The thing I remember, one of the things that we need to be thoughtful of is we'll be conducting the interviews for the committee in open session, and we'll
Right.
need to go to executive session to make a decision about who will be on the committee. And we need to make sure we're not packing a board meeting that's already full with, and I mean, this is important, but to the point of trying to keep meetings to 2 or 3 hours, I imagine, if we're trying to get 7 to 9 people, that's at least 7 to 9 candidates that we would interview in open session. I mean,
So do we have to, okay, there's an interview okay, wow, all right, because when we did the 5th grade committee, we did not do any of this. People just signed up.
We did, yeah, it's not, we don't need to do interviews for this. That,
I thought we
is
did.
not a requirement.
I
It
thought,
would be for a board member, of course, but, not a requirement for the committee.
okay, I thought we had talked about, but maybe
did.
that will break
was-
down a barrier. Like if somebody is really, really feeling not good about doing an interview in open session, then they would maybe not want to be on the committee, but if that's not a part of the getting onto the committee process, then maybe that will entice more people to.
I think one of the, it was Chris's idea to do the interview, and I think he was trying to make it a more transparent process. But I'm happy to support either way. I just want you to know it's not some kind of, there's nothing that says it's
Is it
required.
possible for, I know we like to do the interviews in open session, but if we have, 2 people from the board speak one-on-one with people or whatnot, or do some follow-up, I think that may be a more effective use of time rather than take open. I would like to see, have
Yeah,
open
I
meeting, like,
think that would have to be its own meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, you may get in resumes and you're like, oh my God, this person is,
Right.
great, and then others you may want to follow up with to make sure they're comfortable with the commitments and stuff like that, right?
I would
Yeah.
not add this to an agenda. I think it's too important to.
I think it's important and to make sure everybody's aware
Yeah.
of what we're doing, right?
But it's its own open meeting. its
I
own
guess,
meeting.
this committee will not be held to open meeting law because it will only have one board member on it, which is Chris. I think what is important to me is making sure that we have diverse perspectives on the committee. Like, I really don't think this committee will be effective with our community if it's just all people who just blindly vote yes for the budget every year.
Or no.
Or no, right,
Maybe
I think it would be the strongest committee if it's a mix of the two. I mean, that is our community. We're not all yes or all no. And so it's just important to me in building this committee that there is some mechanism to make sure that we have perspectives from both ends of from all parts of the spectrum, but.
I'm sorry, so Chris would be the only board member on this?
Well, the idea is that he could chair this committee and,
Okay.
and the committee, he would report back to the board what the committee is doing and their progress. That's not to say that you couldn't ask to.
Well, I asked because I would be more than
Yeah, and
happy to
having
sit on the
done the-
committee as a board member, but I don't want to run into open meeting law and.
I like the idea of you being on it as a vice chair. And then that way, if one of you has a commitment or an obligation, we can carry the work
Yeah, I would be
forward.
concerned to just have one
Um,
board.
having done the 5th grade committee that I did with Brian, I thought we worked really well together. And it was so helpful having both of us there because Brian could often get there earlier than I could. And then he brought cookies.
Yeah, and I mean, if either of you want to,
It's
I have no problem. I just would.
No,
be
I think,
concerned if it's only
I'm
one
just saying
board
that
member.
that's why Elaine and I are gonna do the list. I just think it's really great to have 2 people, just in case someone's running
Right.
late,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just good to
Great.
bounce ideas off of.
Keep
So
in
I didn't
mind,
wanna-
negotiations are coming up too.
Yeah, I didn't
Conver-
wanna
Sure.
assume that you wanted that time commitment, and perhaps if you can work in a chair, vice chair setting, you don't both need to go to everything, it's more like you're helping to share the workload, or you both can go to everything if you like. Violet brings up an excellent point, which is we have all of the negotiations. The administrators haven't formally, but I'm guessing that they're going to want to negotiate. So we're gonna have,
We'll just, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
This is warned for executive session, so.
right, I guess I'm just talking about it in terms of time commitments, like, we will need to be negotiating and those do take up an enormous amount of time. There's planning sessions and then there's actual meeting sessions and so. I do think this committee is really important. I think I think it's so necessary to address so many of our concerns following the last budget season we just had, about how to do better in listening and providing information and advocating at the state. So I shared this mission and duties document with you. If you would read it, I think what we should do is warn this committee for discussion in our next open meeting where Chris will be, August 7th.
So I won't post anything for now,
Okay.
and we'll do it on August
So
7th.
the other thing, I think Tim mentioned, I definitely want to be very careful about how, like, you know, like Tim and everybody else, like, they already have so much to do.
Yeah.
And I think asking them to come to a committee meeting, it just seems like a big ask, but maybe that's where Tim and Chris could maybe meet with them, you know, like, you know, just something smaller, but because to come to a meeting with 7 to 10
Yep.
people, I just think that's a
We,
lot of stress that we don't want.
But I would imagine that Tim could say probably the amount of hours he spent.
Yeah. Let me, I can speak to this one. So, part of the idea is that this would be, Tim and I would not be part of it so that folks felt they, could have the opportunity to speak freely, but that we would be staff liaisons. So if there's any finance questions, you know, Tim's team could prop up the data for it. They could furnish
Okay, great.
information.
Mhm.
But the idea is this is something that is board and community run, and not, you know, Tim and I have our own communication plans, right? But we would be staff liaisons to support in providing resources and give the committee anything that they need, but not be attending the meetings.
And so it's not like they're gonna have less work. They're still gonna do all the same work that they always did, but hopefully this committee will help do some of the outreach and
Right, right,
education
right.
that they have previously
Okay.
been tasked
Yeah.
with.
That was just one of.
I think it's not taking off of our plates, it's widening it to make sure that we as a district are doing a more effective job of engaging the community and sharing information, because we're gonna need a bigger push than ever, given the challenges. So it's
Yeah.
really about widening all around. Thank you for that.
Yeah, no, this sounds good because it is a lot of work.
And, you know, connecting, you know, we have this warned as, you know, facilities and budget. You know, we know that we have significant facilities needs. We know that given the mechanics of Act 173 right now, we're not in a position to be introducing a massive bond to our community. So I think it's important that we still, you know, bring up facilities and that
It's on the radar.
it's on our radar. The facilities issues haven't gone away. We've just gotten more significant financial complications. I think a lot of this committee's work, though, is you know, working with legislators to say, we need construction aid. Where are we at with the construction funding committee? I spoke with a legislator about this last week, Senator Ram Hinsdale, and, you know, trying to get our legislators to really have forward momentum with this. We as school districts need state support here. This is not something communities cannot be backing bonds of the magnitude that, you know, some of our communities have taken on. So I just want to bring that back up to the conversation. You know, in the meantime, we have our facilities stewardship plan. We are, you know, we're going to continue to we're going to keep, you know, patching to the extent that we can, but you know, it's not wise to get into significant renovations for, you know, on facilities if we're going to need more significant renovation. So I just wanted to connect this to the conversation to say, you know, we had the enrollment committee who brought us the ZEMS. Last year, we, put the ZEMS in place to address enrollment, and those cohorts are going to be aging through our middle and high school. The needs haven't gone away, and we had talked about having an infrastructure committee. So I just wanted to connect the conversation and say, right now, there is not an active infrastructure committee that we can develop, but that the finance committee is going to talk about these in tandem as we sort of nurture this seed.
I think that's super
And
important.
again, the advocacy for finance is directly linked to the school construction fund. So this committee is really going to be doing a lot of education and advocacy around budget and facilities, which is not wise for us to separate right now.
No,
I
no, and
think-
maybe, oh, sorry,
Sorry.
I was just gonna say, maybe we need a capital campaign.
We do.
This is absolutely one, and Martine Gulick is also on that, advocating hard for school construction funds. Yeah, I don't know, I think we're a couple years out.
I think it's super important though that I'm glad that facilities is here because I think there's not a lot of belief in the community that the facilities are still front and center important. And I think that some of the budget stuff has eclipsed this for the community. And I think it's important that the message get out. We still have these needs.
Yep, so I think it needs to be discussed
Yeah, and
together.
this is also- sorry, Cecily, nationwide
Mhm.
also, and just because of climate change, what we know now is that the heat does affect younger children and really like up until like 9 years old, like, to put them in these rooms that are about 95 degrees, like it's bad enough for me.
Children don't sweat effectively.
Don't-
They don't.
They have, I'm gonna say it wrong. They have a less water body ratio. I forget what it is, and that's not effective. It's remarkably unhealthy, and it's gonna be billions of dollars nationwide to do this.
I think this links back to, I don't feel as a board member, I truly could appreciate the facilities conversation until I was able to visit the schools. And so I would like to see an annual opportunity for the board to do school visits. I did them last year and it was really eye-opening. And I felt bad at the time. I had just had Lily, and so I brought Lily in my stroller, and I had this feeling like, oh, I'm gonna be that person who has to like try to get the stroller through and hopefully she doesn't cry, but it showed the ways that any student who needed to roll through the facility would struggle. Our high school is not ADA compliant, and I think that's a really big issue. That's an aside. I would like to get on the calendar for fall, board members to have the opportunity to do school tours so that we all can have a look at our school facilities and also see our schools in action, which is just a nice opportunity for board members. But I chatted with Violet about this, and so hopefully maybe in September or October, we can get that scheduled and board members can find opportunities to go do school tours.
I'm on it.
In the past or last year, they were able to offer multiple times. So that, those of us who work or what have you had multiple options to do different schools and not all on the same day. So it wasn't like a 6-hour tour. And we also invited our city council and our city manager to also come and look, and maybe that would be a nice to extend
Legislators as well.
that invitation as well. So that the rest of our leadership has an idea of what our facilities look like. Okay, so
I'm sorry, coming
Yeah.
out of this discussion, are we approving this or do we have to take a vote on this to move it forward or what is?
No,
the-
it's,
I don't think so, but I think we should discuss it on our August 7th
On the
meeting
August
in open
7th, and that's where
session.
we'll-
Yeah, and that's where we'll
Put
make
that on the agenda.
final
Okay.
decisions. I emailed this charge to you. Please let me know if you think there's any important changes. I think we've covered most of it, but I would welcome your feedback or comments.
Mhm.
Okay, anything else about this for now? Knowing that we're also going to discuss it on the 7th with Chris.
Very exciting.
Okay, great. So next we have community engagement, public comment, and online guidelines. I would really like to focus this conversation on our public comment and online guidelines piece. I think we've had a decent amount of community engagement discussion already today. If there's something important that comes up, let's chat about it. But I would love to spend this time to finalize what we would like our public comment protocols to be and our online guidelines. And make a plan to clearly communicate that so that everyone knows what to expect and feels they're being treated the same. The feedback I had from Chris about this is he is a strong advocate or very much appreciates the VSBA's public comment guidelines. He thinks they're great. And he thinks that we should consider doing away with the time cards because he thinks that it, he doesn't love it. So I'm just adding his perspective to the conversation. If we want to look at what the VSBA's,
And I have it here too.
okay, great. Do you know what page that is in our?
No, I just printed it all.
Okay,
But
I can find it real quick and let everyone know. Do you think that would be in board operations? Probably. I can start the conversation off with, I just think,
Republic comment period suggested language for board chair.
could be, I'm not totally sure. Let's see. I think I just would like to, I would like to consider that when we know, like, we usually put 15 minutes for public comment. And if,
10, I think usually.
10, I'd like to consider if we know that we have less than 5 people who'd like to make a comment, I think it would be helpful. I don't want to be in the business of looking like I'm shutting down someone who's saying something that we as a board don't agree with, or I don't want to be in the business of shutting down free speech ever. That said, there is a pretty clear line when someone is saying something to identify a specific person or that's harassment or just is not appropriate. And as your chair, I'm committing to trying to get better at being very firm about that. But I really feel that if someone needs to come to the board and express discontentment with the budget or express discontentment with a policy, I think people should be free to share that. That's the point of public comment. I'd like to take the example that we had this past fall with the budget not passing. We had, 100+ people in the room, and some of the people wanted to comment about the same thing. And so I'd love to have some guidelines in place where when it's clear we have a lot of people, where the chair can say, if you're here to comment on this specific thing, please, select, this is how much time we have for this conversation, and then we need to move on with the rest of our board. So, please select 10 representatives that you feel cover your discussion point, and each person will be allotted 2 minutes. And if you have a public comment not related to this topic that we presume you're all in the room for, you will also be given 2 minutes, but we'll have that separate of something like that, where it's organized, we're hearing from everyone, but there's no opportunity for the public to overtake our meeting with public comment.
Because I think it needs to be clear that this is a public meeting. It's not a meeting with the public. And so it says here, like, community members, this is like sample language. We are about to enter the citizen comment period of our meeting. Fellow board members and I recognize the importance of hearing from you on topics the board is considering. As a reminder, the citizen comment period is not designed to be discussion, but rather an opportunity for board members to listen to constituents.
Yeah.
And then it goes, you will have 2 minutes. And, I personally have, I don't believe I am supported on the board, and I don't believe, and it seems like I'm not supported in the community, although every board runs their meeting this way. You can go to, I listen to a lot of board meetings. It's 2 minutes. You need to make your point. And it's not, I don't think that it's shutting people down. They're allowed to speak. And it's, so this is just my opinion. I do think I am alone in this. And I also think it's 2 minutes or 3 minutes, whatever you want it to be. And it just has to be the same throughout. Because what's going to happen is you get this budget thing and 100 people show up, as they should, which I think it's amazing.
Yeah.
But then if you say, oh, okay, now everyone, then obviously you have a different rule. I do think then that really does look like you're you're shutting somebody down. But it's fairly standard practice. It's all through VSBA, 2 to 3 minutes, whatever. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak, and this one says, each of it is allotted blank minutes. It's up to us, but it is all throughout their rules.
Well, to your
Um,
point, like if each citizen is given 2 to 3 minutes and 100 people show up and 100 people want to comment, they do effectively, we won't have a board meeting outside of public comment.
And but that's where you come in as the board chair. Clearly, we have a different situation here. Here's,
I want to make that now. I don't want to make
Yeah.
that when something has popped
Right.
up, you know,
Yep.
particular, I mean, sorry to.
No. So my perspective on this is that we're all adults and you have to read the room. And if we have a situation where there is a lot of, you can tell there's going to be a lot of comment, you have to read the room and you have to respect that. I think we did a tremendous disservice to the community when, I don't want to say disservice, and I want to take that back. Where I feel we didn't garner a lot of, good feelings from the public is during the public comment session when we tried to shut down at any point in time. I understand there's a lot of people here and so on and so forth. The best meeting we had was where we just let them speak for a long time. And I think it's really important to understand what the topic is and how much emotion there is around that topic and I agree though that, you're going to have, when we had the discussions and you had 10 people come up and talk about the same thing and say the same thing. Yes, at that point, as I would expect the board chair to say, if somebody has something different to say about this, please come up, right? We can't have the same thing over and over and over again, and it can devolve into that. But that's basic meeting management, right? I mean, we have to be, I think we can have guidelines, but we have to appreciate, the moment and understand that, it can't always be 2 minutes. I don't agree that it's got to be 2 minutes and you're shut off and all of that.
I actually respectfully disagree.
I don't agree with that because I think that just to adults who are coming up to and express an opinion and probably have never been to a board meeting and feel very strongly, I think that right there turns people around and says, I'm not going to vote for the
Then we
budget.
should
I'm
have
gonna do
public
this."
comment beginning at 5:30. That's if that is, this is VSBA, when the number of people wishing to speak is large, the board may authorize the chair to use a speakers list.
I think,
So so maybe when it's surrounding budget, then it starts at 5:30.
Yeah, absolutely.
If it's going to be an hour-long public comment, I frankly don't want to be here till 11 o'clock. I have to get up at 5 a.m. and go in, and I am in charge of other people's children. And I'm here for a business meeting. And, I think I think, yes, people, if people come up and everybody takes like 10 to 12 minutes or even like 5 minutes, that's going to be a long meeting. And so I just.
And I don't
So, okay. And
disagree
then
with that at all.
you all know my opinion. that's it. Yeah. So I've said my piece.
I just think the second you draw a line and you say it's black and white, you're going to, you really run the risk of turning a lot of people off. And it's just a matter of, hey, let's look at the topic. Do we need to allow some extra time? If somebody runs over by a minute, is that okay? I think if, again, we have to be very sensitive to the fact that, the community feels this is a very important forum and they do want to comment. Again, if they're saying the same thing over and over again, we're done. We're moving on.
I think a place too where I in the past have felt uncomfortable asking someone to stop is if they were having some sort of tech or I've noticed someone like reading and then they're nervous and they like forgot where they were reading from their statement and they are trying to look where they're wasting like 15 to 20 seconds trying to remember
Mhm.
where they wanted to. It feels harsh for me to be like, sorry, your time's up, because clearly you're nervous, but you've tried to come here. And then sometimes we have someone making a public comment where they're trying to take an opportunity to recognize someone or be very kind. And it feels, which if I'll take the feedback, if you think like, okay, but you still have to cut it down. It feels just very cold to be like, hey, thanks for trying to recognize this member of the district. This isn't the appropriate setting, or you've used your time. It just feels like not community building.
That was
then-
Michael Healy's point, though. They 2 minutes. That was our training. So
Or like,
Yeah.
frankly, I think it's my responsibility as a chair, if someone starts commenting about current or former board members, it's my responsibility to protect those board members from being publicly attacked. That said, as the chair, if someone has a problem with me and feels the community needs to know that, I have no interest in sitting in this leadership position and censoring someone from the opportunity to share with the
My
community
name
how
was
they feel.
mentioned too.
So I'm saying,
And
I
former board
think
member.
that, I think it's important for me to get better at protecting the people who are not sitting in the spokesperson role, right? Like, it's in our guidelines not to identify specific people. But as the spokesperson of the board, I don't want to censor speech about me. Because I have the capacity as the spokesperson to say that's enough, you're going into,
Well, if we're thinking about the same thing, my name was mentioned too, and I do have a real problem with that. And I
as
did
you,
not
as
feel
you should,
protected.
as you should.
And I feel very vulnerable in this chair. And I don't want to come to these meetings to be attacked. My job is hard enough as it is. And education brings up people's stuff. And, I'm in the process of I'm just gonna let this go because I've gotten resistance, like massive resistance from this. And it's funny, I talk to people from, different, I was even in Washington State, they're like, oh yeah, we always have time limits. I'm like, okay. So I tried and I was going on Michael Healy's training and the VSBA, and if we choose not to do it, that's great. I just
And I'm not saying,
At a loss.
Laura, please understand, I'm not saying, hey, we let people go on for 5 or 6 minutes.
Right.
At the start of the comment, please keep your comment to 2 to 3 minutes. It's up to us to gauge, are they starting to ramble? Are they going on? If they hit 2 minutes, it's appropriate to say, okay, can you wrap it up, please, to get to the next person? I think that's absolutely just basic meeting management. But I do think we need to read the room. And if we start trying to say, okay, 2 minutes, boom, you're done, I think we are going to create a lot of bad
But I
feeling.
think public comment should start at 5:30.
I hear the 2 points and I think they both have immense validity. I think what Laura's saying is we need to treat everyone the same, because if we don't treat everyone the same, we're opening ourselves up to discrimination. But I think your point is very well taken as well, that if a community member takes the time to come here to share their perspective and we just clinically shut them down, then regardless of if their point is positive, negative, or neutral, they're not going to be feeling well heard. So I'm kind of a bleeding heart, so this is a place as a chair where I need to grow and do better, because I want to treat everyone the same. I want everyone to feel treated the same, but I also am very attuned to like emotions. So I'm trying and Laura, I feel like I owe you an apology. I want you to be protected and feel protected, and no one has the right to come to a public board meeting and
Yeah,
attack
they
you.
don't.
And I'm
And they-
sorry
and
that
they
I,
do. And
I'm
they
sorry
do.
that I didn't do a better job of protecting you, and I'm gonna try to do better in the
Yeah.
future.
And that's one of the reasons, like, that's a great example. And there's also been emails. And I just don't think, just because I sit in this chair and I'm trying to do my very best, and this is a really complicated job, that people just, it's kind of like being in front of my students. They just think they can say whatever they want to me, like I'm not a real person. And I feel like that's what's happening. Like, we're not real people. Well, we are real people. And that
There's-
does something.
There's always space.
And I've gotten comments, oh, grow thicker skin. My skin is thick. All right, I've been a teacher for 30 years. I have 2 children. I'm on the school board. Like, really, there's nothing anybody can say to me, but I don't choose to sit here and have my integrity questioned. And that's what's been happening. And I really, it just makes me sad, and it makes me feel like, just really, like, I'm like, people can now just, doors open for people to come and just say whatever they want.
Can I propose a suggestion for a way forward? First of all, I think civility is critically important in general. We teach, our students this is a big part of respectful communication. And I think it's reasonable that, we practice it and respect it in return. So I very much think all around, it's appropriate to ask for respectful communication. And I want to acknowledge that this is a difficult volunteer job and you all commit a significant significant amount of your lives to this, and it's important for you to feel respected, right? I would propose that we adopt the VSBA guidelines, and that with that, the chair has the authority to make decisions in meetings that we couldn't possibly articulate every scenario. But I do think the VSBA guidelines give enough parameters. And with every experience, it is very much the prerogative and the expectation that the chair runs the meeting as necessary. Say we have a massive crisis, whatever it is, we might make the decision, packed room, to modify the agenda to hear, to expand public comment, right? That needs to happen. We may make the decision to say, okay, administration, we're going to cut you off at 15 minutes of a budget presentation, and we're going to have 40 minutes of public comment for budget, right? You can set parameters within the meeting that don't necessarily, so you could modify maybe that, again, that's specific enough so that there is parameters around treatment of folks, which I think the VSBA guidelines have. The reason that the VSBA recommends them is because we have to have consistency. However, as the chair, you absolutely have the authority to make decisions that you want. And I think you just make them based on the situation. I think that there are a few situations where as chair, you're going to have to make a big, massive shift, but that the guidelines that the VSBA has put out are pretty tried and true, and they're consistently applied across the state. So that's my 2 cents.
I'm gonna add my thoughts. I definitely agree with reading the room, and I think we did that, for instance, in the Mr. Sebo incident. You just decided a lot of people are here to speak. We're going to choose X number of people to be representatives because we think we have similar things to say to the other people. That's what we're gonna do for time effectiveness. But I also think we all know as parents that consistency is drummed into us when children are infants. Whatever you do, just be consistent. So that when Greer says to me, I want to go play here, I already know that that's been tried before and I need to be consistent and firm. No, because of this. So I think that we need to be consistent so that people know that maybe we increase it to 4 minutes, whatever we decide. But I think it needs to be, generally speaking, consistently applied. But I think, like Violet said, there will be special instances where you will read the room and say, there are many people here. What do we do? Oh, this is what we do. This is how we handle it this time, this day,
And modify the agenda so that we're still having a meeting that is, again, within the VSBA's guidelines, so that we can be sensitive to the community's needs and, not be here for 6 hours kind of a thing.
Exactly, that there are consistent guidelines that we almost always employ because that's just the way it is.
So as someone who would be moderating comment in the near future, I think it would be helpful still for me to know if we could have a timekeeper like Laura, like if you could still tell me when it's been 2 minutes, and then I can utilize the space between 2 and 3 minutes.
I usually set it for 3.
Okay.
And what I don't understand is I haven't cut them off. And I've gotten criticized for that too, only because I don't feel the support from the board. And it is really hard. And particularly when there's a student there, it's the last, I think people think I like this.
Perhaps
I
there's a
don't.
different timekeeper for the next coming school year.
Yeah, would
That's
that
a
be-
role that's rotated.
Yeah, I'm like,
That'd
I'm
be
trying to just.
nice
keep the
for you,
meeting
Laura?
Running, yeah,
Like-
I mean, somebody else wants to do it. But I can't meet resistance from all of you and from here. So I'm happy to let it go. If somebody wants to do it, great. I'm also happy to just keep time and just like give you the signal. If you want to do it, I could do that.
Well,
But
speaking to resistance from the board, I feel like probably one of the things you're referring to is you tell me it's been 2 minutes, you've been 3 minutes, and I'm still not cutting them off because I sense that they're almost done, and so I just want to let them finish. And so I'm not trying to be resistant to you. I think I could try,
I don't think it's you, I don't think it's you, Chelsea. I think it's the collective board, like, since I've been on here. Right?
Yeah.
I just think and which is fine. It's just fine. If people don't agree with me, I'm completely fine with that.
I think if as a team, we would like for each individual public comment to be 2 to 3 minutes. It would be helpful for me as the person leading the discussion to know when it's been 2 minutes. So I can try to find an opening within the next minute to encourage the person to wrap up.
Yeah.
And then consistently be done there unless there's some kind of
Right.
extenuating circumstance where we need
Unless you
to
think I'm a complete
modify the
jerk.
agenda to have more time for the
Unless you think
discussion.
I'm a complete jerk, when people are having trouble with technology, which is going to happen.
Yeah.
And won't like start, it's not.
Yeah.
worth my time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, I feel like. This is just about consistency and fairness, and I realize I'm alone in this room thinking like this.
I don't think you're alone.
I would share that my perspective is that we need to be clear, 2 to 3 minutes is standard, it's recommended.
Yeah.
I think the consistency piece is something the board needs to agree to. And I think the board and the chair need to have the understanding that the chair has the authority and the expectation to modify as necessary. So it can't be every board meeting, but when there is an extenuating circumstance where our community needs to be heard, the chair will make an organizational decision to extend discussion
Yeah.
as appropriate. That could mean if there are 100 people in the room, that the first 10 people to sign up, maybe it's, hey guys, we have 30 minutes for comment. Everyone can give one, it's 1 minute each, or you can decide on 4 speakers. And that's, an
Right.
organizational technique that a lot of boards and chairs use
Yeah.
in extenuating circumstances. I think there's outliers where the chair leads the meeting and makes the decision. However, it's not going to be and that could be an example is, all right, we've heard enough on this topic. So I'm going to open it up to others now. So, right, the chair has to have that latitude and does under our governance model. However, boards who have PG have the VSBA guidelines for a reason. And that consistency in general will suit the board well.
Yeah, and I mean, Laura, I want you to understand, I am not saying it should be a free-for-all at all. And the content of what is being said is extremely important, right? If somebody gets to continue to talk or not. Again, I am really concerned with ensuring that people have the opportunity to speak. I also, having sat on the other side for a year or so, I think it's also, when you do have new people come in who may not have been here before and they don't know how it works, I think we do a good job at the start of saying, this is how we're going to accept comment. It's printed on the agenda. It's very clear. I think where we struggle a little bit is when we get into certain topics and we ourselves go over time so that we put the pressure in, and people want to comment on those particular areas of maybe of a policy or whatnot. Yet we've taken up all of the time and now we've kind of put the pressure on, okay, well, we really don't have time for a comment, but we
Yeah.
need to, so we continue to go over and over.
And that's something I had suggested in one of your questions, Chelsea, was building in 10 minutes per each action item. If we-
Right, for,
just build it in.
Yeah.
You know what I
That's
mean?
and we need to be very good at policing ourselves to
Better.
adhere to
That would be
time
the chair. Yep. And
that's
even
where we
if
fall down sometimes.
if monitoring reports or presentations are going long, that would also be the chair's
I think
responsibility to keep us
I
on
think
track.
part of the education though is that, and I've heard this from a number of constituents now. They make comments and we sit stony faced. Well, it's not discussion. So I think we need to stress that it's not a discussion. You comment,
we hear you,
we hear you.
but
And
but
We may not even
sometimes,
nod, we may not even react.
sometimes the act, like for example, public comment on an action item, sometimes it's a question and we, for a while tried, we're not engaging in discussion at all, but it was creating more confusion. And often when somebody asks a question, they're not the only person to have that question. So for example, with a monitoring report or an action item or an administrative presentation, if a community member has a question and the administration present is able to answer it in real time, I think that we should I think it's just efficient and makes sense.
I agree, just
I
not during
don't
public
think-
comment
It-
because
it's not during the public comment, but during when public, members of the public have the opportunity to comment or have questions about something specific. We can always encourage them to also do email, but what I like about when a public member asks a question in a presentation is anyone listening has the opportunity to hear the answer. Whereas email, we would have to make time to read out that email for everyone to hear the answer.
I prefer the opportunity to address those in real time too, because oftentimes I have to follow up with a bunch of meetings and a bunch of emails and people separately. So when I know the answer to something, it is best to share that with the community. And if I don't, I can say, great, let me follow up with you.
I think I also though need to get better at, I think there have been times where we're talking about a budget and a community member has a great question and both you and Tim are engaging in dialogue about the answer to the question and it winds up running long. I need to get better at saying, can we try to focus on answering the question? And
My other suggestion would be that if you turn around and you say to somebody, okay, can you send me an email about that? And, or I'm going to take that question down and I'm going to follow up with you. Those responses should potentially go into our meeting minutes or into some sort of document available from the website so that if somebody is going and watching the meeting afterward, or they're looking at the materials, there may be a parking lot document that answers some of those questions for them, right?
think
So
If it's
that-
one-on-one, they always get nuanced. And who knows about consent if the person wants, I think the best way to do it is to
Absolutely.
share, if I know the answer or I can speak to that, within a
But-
time frame.
But in those instances
it.
where you say, I'll need to follow up with you on that, where it could have been public, but now is it? Because,
Well, I
It's
think-
on the budget webpage anyway, you know what I mean?
but I just want to make
I
sure
do.
your
I do.
point
people
is
know
well
who are
taken.
watching the meeting know, whatever happened to that question.
Yeah.
If somebody states their name for the record and asks a question and it says, that's a great question, I'll need to follow up. That question can be put into the minutes as like, this person asked this question, and usually the minutes would read like, so-and-so asked this question, Nicole said she would follow up via email. If there's like an opportunity where that question is restated and your response, if it is very a personal response answering their specific questions, then don't share personal information, but if you have like a general answer to the question that you email to them, just copy paste that where community members can read it.
Just looking at the time here, we have about 10 more minutes until we've got to get to consent agenda.
Okay.
Um,
I'm sorry, I'm talking about effective meeting management.
Started the day thinking we had all the time
all the
in the
time in the world, yeah. I mean, in terms of public comment, I feel like the consensus is we're comfortable adopting the VSBA's guidelines. I have some pretty clear feedback from the board about managing public comment. I do have a question for the board, and I feel like it's worth the time. So Elaine, you brought up the non-renewal of Mr. Sebo and the public comment that drew out. I was the chair at the time. And there was a question about my ethics in that process. And I really feel like for transparency, since there is so little I can say about underemployment,
personnel.
right?
Matters. Mhm.
I just felt like there was almost nothing I could say to defend myself, and to shut down conversation about it would look bad. And so I was trying to do anything and everything I could to be as clear and transparent while not sharing anything that I can't share, not because I don't want to, but because I can't. And if a situation like that, because we all have close ties to our community, if a situation like that were to arise where it wasn't me, the one chairing the meeting, if it was a board member whose ethics were being called into question, if like I'm sharing from my personal experience, I would want the questions to be stated. I would want community members to share because I would not want it to look like I have something to hide, but that's my personal feeling. And so if in a situation where like that were to arise, where there's some community tie where a board member's ethics are being called into question, what do you all think is the best way to handle that? Does that make sense? Like, I did not, like, when we're talking about you cannot identify a specific person, I was fine with a public comment about me, but what happens on the public comment is about a board member do you just want me universally to say you cannot name a board member specifically? Or,
It's in our guidelines, right?
That,
I guess the reason I'm asking is because if I had just been a board member and not the chair in that specific example, I would not want a chair to shut down questions about that. Like, does that make sense?
I think that's it's a judgment that you're gonna have to make as chair.
Okay,
And if it's a situation where someone is getting unreasonably nailed and it's really incivil, you're gonna have to
Yeah.
jump in.
Mhm.
If it is a situation where we as a board member is a human who makes a mistake and it's a legitimate thing and it's reasonable and civil, it's a different thing. I think this is a board chair judgment.
I mean, I did feel like the
It
public
doesn't say-
comments,
It doesn't say.
I did feel like the public comments about me were civil. The points were.
Yep.
Were fair
I
and
agree,
civil.
and I think
so-
it was appropriate to hear that.
Yeah.
And again, it's reading the room. If you were watching, I mean, a board member has said they were getting crushed and it was, you know, if it's, you're gonna have to use your judgment here, I think.
And Chelsea, it's not here, so. Did you say it? I mean, how come I can't remember?
I have a little blurb.
Yeah,
that
but
I
it's not
read.
on our agenda.
Right, it's, I just have it in
So,
my
I think it's-
meeting, notes.
given the guidelines here,
Well,
Okay.
I mean, if they're not there, then
totally
that's,
match what we say.
that's fine.
I just think following this discussion, I'm more sensitized to if I hear a board member's name, I'm going to stop the comment and say, please don't identify someone specifically. Keep your comments to the full board. I think the reason I'm asking is in this specific example, I would not want a chair to shut down that comment specifically. And I guess what I'm hearing is read the room and figure it out and,
I fully anticipate to get nailed at some point in time, so. I mean, it's,
okay.
Our-
I'm
our
just
civil
gonna
job.
continue to do my best and please do give me feedback. If I don't handle it in a way that feels right to you, please tell me so that I can try to do better.
I think it comes down to what they're saying.
Yeah,
You know, I
yeah.
mean, if it gets really,
yeah, I mean, I think that's
Yeah,
pretty
there's-
obvious to me. If it's just crude and mean and unprofessional, that's
Yeah.
pretty easy, but yeah, okay.
I do think the guidelines that we have on the agenda have to totally match what we say. So that it's 1-to-1.
So
So,
we're gonna adopt the VSBA guidelines, 2 to 3 minutes. Someone is gonna let the chair know at 2 minutes, and it will include at 3. And when the community, if there's a big event, the chair will chair the meeting and make appropriate modifications, including amending the board's discussion times so that we're not necessarily elongating the meeting, knowing that crises will come up, there will be outliers. In general, we will consistently apply the VSBA guidelines. And the timekeeper, is someone else going to take a turn at that for the
I think I
following
would like to
upcoming
take
year?
that off of you, Laura. If
Yeah, oh, I'm
you
not
feel
gonna
like
do
it's
it
painting
anymore.
a,
I'm done with
yeah.
that.
So let's,
so I'll ask someone else.
I had already taken myself
Um,
off. Yeah.
I'm
no,
clerk, I'll do
Okay.
it. I'm happy to monitor
Okay.
somebody and like say,
That's
hey,
great.
you're kind of approaching time, so.
I think it would be helpful for me is if you just let me know when it's been 2 minutes so that I
Mhm.
know I'm looking for an opening in the next minute to encourage them to wrap up.
Sure,
That's how
sure.
I'm gonna.
And I think more than that, I think it's being clear, we're gonna let you know at 2, finish your thought, you know, and then rather, you know, just to be, that is your buffer.
Okay.
And this is a conversation I wish we had had. Because after the training with Michael Healy, I was trying to institute what he has suggested. And I did keep asking, like, how do we do this? And, you know, I took this from city council with how we ran our the form for the candidates. And looking at, but we've never, this is the first time we discussed it, so I appreciate the conversation. So thank you.
Could
I
we,
appreciate it too.
could we consider adding a blurb at the top of our agenda? Michael Healy had suggested this at meetings that he helps facilitate. They actually print out pages for each seat. And I
Yeah.
think that's a waste of our printing and,
Yeah, 100% waste of preference.
but just something that says like, welcome, thanks for coming to observe your school board at work.
I have that, could be easily modified, or, somebody could, yeah.
Okay.
So next steps on this, Chelsea, do you want to just let Delina know what to specifically put on the agendas?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm happy to do that.
And I was just gonna say as clerk, I mean, if I'm gonna monitor time speaking, I will also monitor time as far as our discussion and let you know when, hey, we kind of hit a time, we gotta
That's
move on,
helpful.
right?
Yeah.
So
That's great.
That's
I-
helpful.
Call for the orders of the
I'll
day.
I'll try
Orders.
to,
The language.
I wrote that down earlier, Laura. I was like, that, I know she's.
And to get back, like the curriculum monitoring report, for instance, we got way
Way.
detracked and I was getting questions that I'm in a position where I have to answer them but we needed to go back to the orders of the day because we were pretty off topic ultimately.
That's
I'll
what
try
gets us.
to, I'll try to do better, but it would be helpful to have that support
Yeah,
of
yeah,
like,
and as clerk.
Yeah, it's reasonable support. Yeah.
Monitoring board, I know, and Tim is really good at that copy editing, so is Elaine.
yeah,
Can that be done?
offline.
That can be done offline.
Anything
Yeah.
that's not
Because they're
substantive.
Really good at that. Like,
Yeah.
you.
Those should be done offline directly with Delina. And because she's the one who types those up.
Yeah.
And so we work with Delina directly on those. And then same thing with like, we don't have to read the policies 3 times in an open meeting.
Oh, okay.
They go in the board minutes, they're published in written form. We have to read it the first time.
Okay, that was.
And we don't have to we shouldn't be discussing like copy edits,
Yeah, that's what I was, that's what, because but Tim and Elaine are really good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Delina types those up and prepares those, work directly with her on those.
Yeah, and that, like, the substance or content, yes.
should be discussed. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Should we consider looking at our board work plan? I think that's an appropriate thing to try to finish before we go to consent agenda.
Yep.
Does that sound good?
Yes.
So this is the calendar sheet that you have, and this is designed to spread out our work across the year, so we know, like, for example, we've received just a few emails about cell phones in schools. So instead of trying to figure out how to add that to the agenda right away, what we would do is we would say, where does cell phones in schools fit under policy governing or monitoring? We would look for that time, and then we would like make a note to ourselves, this is a discussion topic when we're monitoring this policy, just as an example.
I think it
So-
would be important to put, I just made a note on my calendar for under monitoring for July. So with the retreat, I think we should put the policy review schedule and then in parentheses in retreat. I'd like to add that if that works for folks.
Just based on how this meeting has gone today with not even a full board, we're missing one person who would, I think, have plenty of helpful discussion points to add. And in future, we'll have 2 more people. I think trying to do the self-assessment and a policy review is going to take more than 3 hours. So I think we should consider how we would like to divvy up that work, but perhaps make a plan for it in July. I mean, does that feel fair? Like what the survey, going through the survey itself took over an hour. So, but I think it was important. It helped me to understand as a group where the deficiencies are, where our pros are, and what we'd like to improve.
And I think we could restructure that to have it be, we'll learn the routine, but have it, be completed in advance and then like look at the results beforehand, which you
Yeah.
didn't have the opportunity to do today. So through no fault of your own, but, and then maybe it's sharing high level things. And I think that's how we can operate more effectively once the board expands, is kind of more asynchronous work that's sort of
Sure.
housekeeping.
And I think I would make sure that the full results are available to the full board, but then as the leader of the discussion, I would try to tease out what I think is important. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
One thing that other chairs recommended is that this retreat, each board member kind of take the
Mhm.
charge on facilitating the conversation for different topics. That way it's not just like, I mean, this is very much like our normal meeting, right? Like as chair, I like organize the discussion and sharing that so that it feels more collaborative and less authoritative.
Absolutely. Each board member could take a piece of that. And again, as we expand, I think that'll be important to have everyone has a.
Okay, so looking at this, we're trying to invite, like, in terms of our advocacy, we're reviewing new legislation now. The VSBA is sending that out to all of us. And then we would invite our legislators to discuss, what are our advocacy pieces in November ahead of them starting their new session, and then we invite them back in June to tell us about how the session went and what they worked on. That's just the advocacy piece. In monitoring, you can see like where we monitor which policies and what reports we can expect to hear. Community linkage is kind of we could add I don't think the listening sessions need to be added to this calendar unless.
Yeah, I just.
No,
have
this
written
is
in
just
September,
board work
October,
plan.
November,
Yeah.
December. We have four, we have four scheduled, and then I think we were gonna see how.
I think it's basically, do you want any monitoring reports moved around? It's something
Right.
that typically happens.
March, we have our special board meeting, new member work session, which is when I would think we would do our policy governance training. We have lots of time allocated for budget from November to March. Anything that you guys, I mean, does this calendar work? Does everyone see how we're like spreading our work around? Any changes or edits you'd like?
I know negotiations don't happen every year, but it's because it's a huge thing and I don't see it here anyway.
Yeah.
And we somehow,
Yeah, so negotiations aren't a part of our open meeting agendas. We typically have negotiation updates in our executive sessions. And usually the chief negotiators on behalf of the board are just updating the board about how negotiations are going and asking any questions as negotiations proceed. But that's not typically something we talk about in an open meeting, and they're not meetings that happen synchronously with open meetings. So I think this is meant to be like our open meeting schedule. But I appreciate the idea, like, where can we, that work is also, it's hard to predict. Like, it's hard to predict how long they'll go on. So it might be difficult to find a place in the year where it's like the easiest. They also have to be open to negotiating at that time. So just
Can I ask a quick question? So when we look at the monitoring, so 2.6, that's going to be at our next meeting, and in the meeting after is 2.1. Is that how that works?
Yeah.
That's what we're looking at. Okay,
Yep.
so it's split across the month.
right.
We'll just do one reading. Is that right? Okay, great. That will save your voice, Tim.
Well, these are the monitoring reports. So this is where we go through are we in compliance?
Oh, you're right.
you know, that kind of
No,
stuff.
got it.
Yep.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other feedback or questions about this? I'm glad you all have it. Kind of helps.
I just wrote them.
I'll add the policy review piece.
Great.
These are our days.
Thank you.
So if we're ready, we could move to consent agenda. We're gonna have to,
There's 6, 7 libraries, so.
the board structure conversation, I don't think was, and we can do policy governance training anytime.
Yep, consent agenda, I think.
Yep.
Thanks.
Okay. So agenda item 5, consent agenda. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the accounts payable vouchers, 1,018, 1,075, 1,079, 1,080, 1,083, 1,085, and 1,086?
Yes. Can I ask questions? Or,
Yes, any questions?
Just a couple of general notes, and I'm sorry Tim's not in the room. I liked the format that was presented. I thought it was very easy to read and to go down through. My only request, and I could ask him to do this, is that could we include the account number in the table? So I can map that back to the subtotals. that-
Yes.
But I very much like the new format. It's much easier to go down through and.
Good. Glad to hear that. Yep.
Um,
I will follow up on that.
Okay. Then my only other question, just a clarification question at some point, doesn't have to be today. In 1079, I'm not quite understanding why the different fund accounts were used. The payee was all Vermont State Teachers Retirement, VSTRS or whatever that is, and it was split across the different funds. And I was just trying to understand why the payee was paid out of a lot of different funds. It was a Title II fund, a Title IX fund, different funds. I just wasn't quite clear.
Lesser
I'm not
funds.
questioning the payments. I'm just trying to understand why it was split across those funds.
Yeah, Title.
We'll have to get that response
Yeah,
from,
I'm, it's
from
not,
Tim.
doesn't
Yep.
impact my.
Yep.
my-
Do you want to shoot him he just
I-
email him with me on
I will
copy?
do that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions about the AP orders? Okay, the AP orders are approved. Do I have a motion to approve the check to the Howard Center for Human Services in the amount of $246,968.20?
I move to accept.
Laura moves. Do I have a second?
Second.
And seconds, that check to the Howard Center for Human Services is approved. Okay, next we have lunch. I have a Robert's Rules sort of question. I hate to keep all the tech people here for an hour and then we come back and read the motion to go into executive session, but we're not going in right away. We're going to lunch. So do we have to go to lunch, come back here and do executive session, or can I
We
take the
can-
motion for executive session and make it clear we're not starting until 1?
Yeah, we can close open session and make the motion to start executive session.
At 1 p.m.
You can.
Okay, okay, so, and I can adjourn the regular meeting now? Okay. Well, so I'll do the executive session motion first. Do I have a motion to enter into executive session for the purposes of discussing labor negotiations and real estate contracts under VSA Section 313A for real estate and, which one is? Clearly in summer brain.
You're doing great, Chelsea.
Yeah, sorry. I usually write this out, so I'm not like,
Negotiations.
I said negotiations. I'm just wondering which chapter that's under. Oh, it's a 313A1. Okay. And premature public knowledge would do the district a disservice. Do I have a motion?
I move.
Laura moves. Do I have a second?
Second.
Tim seconds. The motion passes. Oh my God, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, the motion passes unanimously. Tim, Laura, Elaine, Chelsea, Violet, and Joe McNeil, our attorney, will be entering into executive session at 1 p.m. to discuss labor negotiations and real estate contracts. In the meantime, we're going to go to lunch. Do I have a motion to adjourn the regular session?
I move to adjourn regular session.
Laura moves. Do I have a second?
Second.
10 seconds. The regular session is adjourned. We will not return to this room. We will meet for executive session at 1 p.m.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, now, thank you.
All right, so Joe, we'll see you all upstairs at 1. Joe will be here.
Okay. So
Folks, thank you, Nick. Appreciate you being here.
those are also, those are.
Thank you.
The pink or the